Well, Dr. Billy Garvey, that is episode 85, our reflection episode on cultivating courage. What are people going to learn this week?
Yeah, we spent a lot of time in the shorts. We have the most we've ever had contributions from other people about their stories, their advice, their experience. The best questions we've ever had. There's only 8 longs, but it was probably the longest episode because of how rich those questions are. And I really hope people appreciate it because we really appreciate all the effort everyone's gone to sending it in.
Yeah, huge episode. We always say that, but it's a really long episode, but so much benefit. Practical stuff, different ages and ranges and stages for all sorts of kids or where they're at. So something for everyone in this one.
Ends on a beautiful bit of advice from a therapist.
From a clinician. Yeah, amazing getting that advice. Yeah, good. We appreciate that, guys. But I hope you enjoy the episode, guys, and we'll be back with a new episode, a new topic in our next one. So enjoy.
Hi, I'm Billy, a developmental paediatrician.
And I'm Nick, a developing parent.
We're going to use scenes from iconic movies to talk about how we best support our kids.
This is Pop Culture Parenting.
Hey, don't let your mother smell that beer on your breath. She'll take it out on me.
I don't want to see you again for the rest of my whole life. I don't want to see anybody else either.
Who is your daddy and what does he do?
Just use your best judgment. We trust you.
Good morning, Dr. Billy Garvey. How are you?
Good, Nick. How you going?
Good. You always look a little bit nervous when I give you a sensible good morning.
Yeah, I'm just trying to be sensible myself.
Are you troubled by how quickly I can switch gears to sensible Nick?
I'm impressed. I'm impressed as opposed to troubled.
I'm concerned.
No, mate, you're amazing. It's just funny because, we usually have caught up a little bit more between recordings, so I'm sure the fans don't want to hear our chit-chat about just normal life.
It's not that entertaining or useful.
Subtle slip in of fans as well.
You've become more subtle. At the start, it was polarising. For those of you that haven't been listening for a long time, I think it was literally episode 2. Billy goes, we've had a message from the fans. And I just looked at him. I was like, Billy.
I think I've actually got that clip and I wonder if I should put it up because it's quite funny the first time I ever said it.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm pretty sure at that stage, mate, it was like colleagues and mother-in-law.
Yeah. Reluctantly. They're going to ask me about it, so I'll listen.
Billy, interesting on this episode 85, you were thinking potentially, I'm not sure how many questions we'll get on this, but you messaged me during the week to be like, we've got a lot of questions.
So I'm hoping it's not this one, but I'm always worried there's going to be one that's going to be like not that good. And some people might say it's already happened multiple times.
No, you can look at episode blah, blah.
We actually don't get a lot of good feedback about peer group pressure or the Fast and the Furious one, but I think there is the best joke that's ever happened on a podcast in that episode. But I digress. So I was really concerned because I was like, maybe it's a bit too vague a topic or how are people going to have questions about this. Do people like it? And then some feedback came in. I was like, oh, thank God. And then the questions came and people have heard me moan about, that's the hardest bit about the podcast is collating the questions. So 2 nights ago, I was like, cool, I'm going to get out ahead of it and I'll have some sleep before we record. I'll have a cruisy night, make sure I'm well rested. 2 nights ago, I spent, I think, 4 or 5 hours putting them all together. And then I still spent 4 or 5 hours last night doing it because it's probably the highest quality of questions we've ever got. Wow. We've also got phenomenal advice and stories. So we'll see how we go. I'm hoping it doesn't blow out, but we've only got 8 longs. We're going to do some rapid fire shorts, but we're going to hear some stories and we're going to end on some beautiful advice from a clinician that's sent in, some practical application of what they do with kids that are struggling with this.
Awesome.
This is what I'm seeing. The topics are generated by like what I think is helpful and what people are asking for, but it's often what I'm seeing through the weeks leading up to the new topic as well. And I've just seen this all week.
What have you seen?
Yeah, I've got to do it obviously without anything identifiable, but I've seen a teenage girl who has been homeless for the last 12 months, and I'm not talking late teens, and I met her in clinic and then she was gone and missing and all the services were trying to help and Dad was bawling his eyes out coming into clinic. Really high risk worrying behaviour, a kid who's really vulnerable with learning and mental health problems. And yeah, she came back in yesterday, mate. Couldn't believe it. I was like, oh, this is going to be tough, Dad. You know, me and Dad just trying to get through this and how much he's struggling. She came back in and it was this huge courage for her. And you know what it was? It was she found out that while she was homeless, her mum was claiming payments from the government, saying that she was living with her. And she kind of had this big breakdown about her childhood and all this stuff. And she was like, you know, really upset in the room telling me this story. And she's like, I just wanted to come back to my dad. And like they're both getting really emotional in there and stuff. And I'm just like, how courageous. This kid's been living on the streets. Like, yeah, just really vulnerable stuff. And she's back now. It's amazing. It's the best thing that's happened in months for me in clinic.
Good God.
I saw a 5-year-old boy who I've just met, this phenomenal mum, phenomenal, like history of abusive childhood and everything. And she's she's one of the best parents I've met in years. And she's come in and yeah, she's fled horrific domestic violence. And the courage it must have taken for her to leave that, because what we're talking about is how do we give our kids the skill set to face these fears? And she's grown up in that world. She was homeless from 14, this mum. She's then, you know, awful stuff that I can't go into. It's too awful. But all this awful stuff through her childhood, through her teenage years. She's got this gorgeous kid who's struggling because he was traumatised. This kid has been traumatised by his dad, and mum has said, she's worked up the courage to change her story. And it's amazing. I just sat there being like, how did you do this? Like, who taught you this? The way that she parents is beautiful. And she's like, I had to learn for him, you know, and she's got this beautiful, responsive, consistent, caring way that she's guiding this gorgeous little kid. And yeah, it's really inspiring, and we're going to hear some stories about what people have had in their own childhood, what they struggle with in supporting their own parents. But this is a really important topic that I almost did a part twos because of how much great stuff came in, but there's just some other stuff I really want to get to. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. It might get a bit emotional. It might get, you know, a bit tough to hear some of this stuff, but hopefully it's something that is really helpful. And we've just had this amazing feedback. Very quickly, people are just, so there's lots of questions that got sent in that should have made the cut that haven't, just purely by numbers. But as we've said all the time, everything gets read. We see everything. We're trying to figure out the socials a little bit better. Ivy Street are working pretty hard to come on board and support us. So it will get a bit better, but I'm just conscious of the fact that we're getting hundreds of questions and feedback and everything coming in. So it's amazing. It's amazing to be a part of this with you, mate, what's happening with the podcast. And the biggest social enterprise, Guiding Growing Minds, is starting to really lift now and come up around it. And all the talks that I'm doing in the community have just been phenomenal. So it's a really amazing part.
Awesome.
So we're going to go poll, shorts, feedback, questions, and on some helpful stuff.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, should we go? We're going to rapid fire today.
Yeah, let's go.
Whew, here we go. Okay, the polls, Billy. So we put the polls up on Instagram. If you're not following us, go through there and give us a follow. Pop Culture Parenting. Poll. We asked, did you get supported to be courageous as a kid? And 37% of people said yes. Which means 63% of people said no.
Yeah, which is scary, isn't it? And it's like a lot of people talked, and we're hearing some of the questions. They're not like, oh, my parents were bad. It's just they didn't know, but we know now, and this is what we're trying to do.
Yep, sure. Billy, we asked the audience, are you prepared to help your own child be courageous? 83% said yes.
Yeah, so that shows how poor my wording is, because what I actually meant was, do you feel prepared?
Yeah.
And I just, because of the word count and the fact that it was during bath time, I probably could have worded it better, but yeah, but it's good. I think what people are answering there is, yes, this is something I want to get better at and things.
Yep. Last question. Do you struggle to role model courage for your kid? 2/3 of the audience said yes.
Yeah, what's your answer to that one?
I wouldn't say I struggle to. No, I wouldn't struggle to do it. I feel like there's enough opportunities to show them. And you've made me conscious of what those opportunities look like, particularly in social situations.
Yeah. I struggle. Well, yeah, we'll come up with some of the stuff, but my answer was yes to that. Yep.
Okay.
And then, yeah, let's Let's do rapid fire. I promise it'll come up. Don't worry. I'll never miss an opportunity to talk about myself.
Okay, Billy. Shorts time. Hey, how to know when you're pushing your courage too far and doing damage?
What do you got?
Oh, me. God, I always just think
What
about
guides us with every
the child.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Go
watch
to
the
where the
kid.
child's at.
Yeah.
Yep.
Watch the kid.
Yep.
Are they succeeding? Are they growing? Is it making them stronger and more efficient and better at things? If it's not, are you going too hard?
Pare it back.
If it's pushing them back and pushing them down and they're regressing or they're becoming angry and hostile or they're really struggling or they're withdrawing, you're going too hard.
Yep. Made the mistake last week. Back into swimming classes with a year off. Thought we'll go up a level because, we've had a year off. So not in the pool with them. Too far.
Yeah, we've got a question about something.
Went back to the pool during the week and worked on it. And then when she went again last night, phew,
Bang.
bang. Yep. So played it out last week.
Well done.
We've all got to work on it. Billy, best way to help a very anxious and worried 9-year-old girl to be more courageous?
Yeah, so we've got a couple of longs about this. We'll go deeper, but
that's
address the anxiety before you go anywhere near courage. So anxiety overwhelms us. We lose access to our higher functioning. It's not a time to learn. It's a time to support and build back and, return back to a space where you're calm and feel safe. And that's, you can't step towards courage until you do that. We'll talk about how in the longs.
Excellent response. Billy, how do we help our kids to have the courage to join and play with other kids?
I reckon you'll have something good for this.
Do you model it?
Yeah.
Do you play with the other kids first?
Yeah.
With them watching you?
Yeah.
About how you do it? There is
great move.
is there a bit of a problem with that where you just show that I can do that stuff innately? Is there a problem? I know I've got this thing in the back of my head you've told me where you're you socially can do it really easily.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's exactly teaching them how to do it.
No, but the trick is you want to scaffold with them. So instead of them sitting on the sidelines watching you on the swings with another kid, just having the time of your life, you're trying to bring them with you. So the
Gotcha.
trick with everything is how much support do they need to succeed? And I give them that much support. And everyone's like, but they should know by now.
Yeah.
You give them the amount of support they need to succeed. You reinforce it, praise it specifically, you make them feel great about how good they are at that specific thing. And then you gently withdraw your level of support, continuing to watch that they continue to succeed.
Yeah, and you don't wait to give them the feedback. You got to give them the feedback specifically at the time. You can't do it on the end of the bed.
Yeah.
It's 8 hours later, which is what I still do. But I try
Great
to,
attachment and bonding thing, not
Yep.
great for building a skill in the moment. So, yeah.
Okay, good, Billy. I love it. Hey, Billy, if I struggle to have the courage to be my true self, how can I model that for my kids?
I feel a bit unfair to hit you for everyone.
You're not asking me, mate.
No, you mate, you're beautiful, this stuff.
Geez, I tell you what, that person's showing some really good self-awareness to start with. And I think that they're therefore catching themselves and doing a good job of knowing what they can and can't do.
Yeah.
Maybe if it is just if it is a bridge way too far, maybe they try and get someone else to help them try and model it.
Yeah.
If it's like a bridge too far, if this person's like, I'm like me,
Yeah.
33, 43 this month. Maybe try and find someone else to help try and model it a bit more. I don't know. What do you do?
And who do you model it in front of? And we're not modelling how great they are. We're modelling the effort. Who else do you model it in front of? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
The difficulty.
Yeah.
in
The
it.
difficulty. Yes. So
The
don't
fact that you
hide the
struggle
fact
with
that you can't do it.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
Yeah.
don't hide it. Go, I really struggle with it.
yeah.
I think you'll end up being better at it than me.
It's not a big problem for me, but sometimes if you make everything look easy and perfect, your kid can think, oh man, if I struggle with this and he's awesome at it. So it's beautiful insight. Yeah, that came from a dad. So yeah, it's just beautiful to realise that and say, this is tough for me. So it gives you good, practical, realistic empathy of what this is like for a kid, but also an opportunity to open up a conversation and role model, hey mate, this is tough for me. This is how I work on it. How can I support you?
Yep. You've probably just seen me shift in my seat. Caught a couple of highlights in last week's episode, bit on social, and I'm sitting there mouth agape going,
Mate, that's me the whole time. I think.
not my best look, people. So I'm just going to work on it today. I look a bit sharper in the face. All right, here we go.
too, mate.
Billy, How do I teach self-preservation while also teaching courage? Example, standing up to bullies but protecting yourself from potential physical assault.
Yeah, so you've got to open up that part of it. It's really interesting. In the first half of the 20th century, a lot of the evidence around courage was around warfare. And they realised that, like, there was a lot of components, which we've talked about as well, in soldiers that would mean that they'd be courageous. It was mastery in their own skill set, things like that. Like, I am competent in this battle. I am supported by people who will support me and who have competencies as well, so the battalion or the group or whatever. And there is a social expectation. We haven't talked about that much, but a social expectation is a big determination of whether someone will respond in a pro-social way that supports another person or not, whether it's bullying, sticking up for someone, all that stuff. The bit that's really important is that you have conversation about the risk assessment stuff, because we want to make sure that we don't tip courage into something that is just like excessive risk. You know what I mean? The high risk taker who just runs at everything. They've gone too far with courage, so they're still fearful, like the jackass boys. They're still fearful that the crocodile's going to bite them or whatever that they're running across, but they're too far. That's not healthy courage because the risk is too high. And that's why we need to be careful and teach them a risk assessment profile as well when you're on the train and someone's doing something, that if you're isolated and if the person's likely to blow up, you've got to be careful and bring in the support of others. What can I do to make this a safer environment? What can I do to reduce the risk of this being even worse if I intervene? All of that stuff. So, yeah, we're really careful about how we do that in clinic, about, opening up things like family violence and stuff like that. You have to have a risk assessment part. It can sometimes worsen situations by being overtly courageous. So we've got to teach our kids that at a developmental level it's appropriate. You don't be like, well, if you stick up for them, that guy could assault you and all that stuff to the younger kids. You just say we've got to be careful, we've got to watch, and we've got to think about what might happen and look around for risk and stuff like that. But in a healthy way. We've got a good question coming up about that.
Okay, cool. Hey, Billy, how do I minimise my kids' fear when they've got something big coming up? Like a sports game or something.
What do you think? I'm just thinking I'll catch you before you don't.
But what?
You don't minimise it.
Okay, you don't.
No.
Why not?
Because you're minimising fear. We should never minimise any emotions or feelings that kids have. And I understand. I think a lot of us try and do that. I'm sure I do this with Evie. I'd be like, it'll be all right. Oh, it's just, don't worry about it. It's okay.
Oh, shit.
The problem is that it doesn't switch off her automatic system that kicks her sympathetic nervous system into overdrive. And what I'm doing is I'm shutting down a pathway for her to talk to me about it.
Okay, you wanted to talk it through.
So, yeah, we don't minimise it. We also don't exacerbate it. We don't, catastrophise and stuff like that.
You should be worried.
Yeah, exactly. We don't take them either way. We stay with the pocket they're in, validate that feeling like we talk about a lot.
Yeah.
But it's a risk. I think we try and minimise the emotion that they're having.
Can we play it out?
Yeah.
God, I got my grand final this week. I'm nervous as hell.
Yeah, mate, that's understandable. Like, it must be really scary to be going into that.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. What do you think might happen?
Well, what if I stuff up? What if, I have the shot to win the game and I bugger it up? Or what happens if we just lose by a heap?
Well, that might happen, but you've trained all year for this. This is like an amazing opportunity for you all to come together and celebrate that year.
Yeah.
What do you think will happen if that occurs?
If we lose? I'll be pretty sad.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's okay to be sad, isn't it? And I'll be here to support you. What else might happen?
We might win. I might score the winning goal, Dad.
Yeah. What can we do to increase the chance of that happening?
Good night's rest.
Yeah.
Carbs.
Yeah.
Yep.
In moderation.
In the lead up. Yep.
Go and have a kick.
Yeah, go and have a kick practice. Work on that last little thing. I'm pretty ready though, mate.
Well, okay, bang. Didn't take much to get your courage and confidence up.
No. Oh, and scene. Wow, Billy. You're very good at this. He's very good. Well done. I love it.
Oh, thanks, man.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
And that's good.
Just what the pod should be. You and I.
Role
we
play.
can wear costumes.
And scene.
There was a good talk. I remember tried early on to pitch costumes. We dress up as actors from the movies.
I love that. That's good. That's easy. That makes sense to me though. So well done.
Yeah.
Hey Billy, I was an anxious kid but it's worse than an adult. I don't want to pass that on. How do I avoid it?
Yeah, really important. So there is an increased risk in those of us that have mental illness as adults that we pass it on to our kids from a genetic and also from an attachment perspective. Mental illness in primary caregivers threatens attachment. The trick is you have to address it. You have a beautiful empathy for, a lot of people who've never experienced this really struggle with it. It's really hard to know, what clinical anxiety is like or clinical depression or stuff that is debilitating if you haven't experienced it yourself. We can all try, but that's why I've had these awful, experiences in my life, like a lot of us and all that stuff, and that's one of the big motivators for me. But I also worry about passing that on to Yvette and Charlie. And Elise doesn't have that challenge. So, while she is phenomenal as a parent, she might struggle to realise what it's like to be in those shoes.
Gotcha.
You just have to address it. As I've said, the hardest thing that I have in clinic is getting parents to prioritise their own mental health. But you have to. If it's getting worse, ask for help. There's phenomenal general practitioners out there that are the best clinicians we have that you should feel comfortable going and talking to them.
Yep.
Really important.
Yep. Good call. Hey, Billy, got a preppy that is afraid of the school bus. So prep, for those of you who don't know, it's the first year of school here in Australia, preppy. Are we reinforcing avoidance by agreeing to pick up instead?
What do you think?
Oh,
Have you had anything like this? I have.
geez, that's a tough one. Especially that scenario. It's kind of specifically that scenario I find really tough. It's like that you're putting them on something they don't want to go and then you're waving goodbye on the bus. That's really tough for that parent. But I think just support them heaps and even get on the bus if you can and then extract yourself from the bus eventually.
So you might not be able to go on the school bus, but you can go on other buses with them and think about this and give them some skills when they're getting overwhelmed. All of that stuff that we talk about. Like, what is that? What does it feel like? Why do you think that's happening? It's because of the bus. I think this is going to happen. I'm worried about that. Like, we've just role modelled. Yep. What are some things that we can do together that we'll get good at when we're on a bus together? And then I'll make sure that I support you in the transition to where you finally succeed at it on your own. But it's okay to put things on ice and be like, actually, this is too difficult at the moment. Plan B is we drive you in. We're just going to park the bus thing. We'll come back to it when we need to. Yeah,
so you make a good point. So as the parent here that is trying to think about this, you make a good point there of like, it's not, don't make it specifically about that school bus that comes at 8:11 on a Tuesday morning. It can be another bus or another similar type scenario that you can both work on together. Because I'd be like, well, I can't get on the bloody bus with you. So God, you might have to just figure it out or maybe we just don't do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just so once again, there's not avoidance or bad luck you're going to have to swim out the back of the waves. There is a middle ground where I support you in understanding and dealing with these symptoms of anxiety or fear that you have in a way that helps you and I guide you through it. That's school refusal, that's anxiety, that's self-harm, that's anything. There's a middle ground, but you don't have to find the middle ground straight away. I'm still seeing kids that haven't gone back to school since the pandemic. It's just we've got to find the middle ground together. I completely understand that those kids aren't being forced into school and they shouldn't be. I worry about the fact that they're not leaving their bedroom ever, and how do we find that middle ground together? There's a beautiful example of this coming up in the long about the Bunnings, the parent and the kid at Bunnings. Yep.
Billy, is there a stock phrase you can use to help your kid take the courageous step forward?
Yeah. So I have one. It's the same thing I use instead of it's okay. It's I'm here. I say I'm here all the time to Evie. I want that to be, she hears I love you a million times a day. The second most common thing she hears from me is I'm here. So yeah, so really I was going to tell a story, but someone else almost has exactly the same story that we'll end on of something I did in the last week, practically showing her that I'm here.
Oh.
Yeah, so I haven't told you the story yet. So it's nothing amazing. There's a bit of humour in it. But yeah, it's a good example of saying I'm here, showing I'm here. That's what I use. That's the same. She falls over, she's really struggling with something. I never say, you're okay, it's okay. I say, I'm here.
Okay, I like it. There you go, cheat code. Hey, Billy, how do we demonstrate courage to our kids? How can we demonstrate courage to our kids?
Yeah, so it's a really important thing to think about. Now, you have to remember that it has to be you overcoming a fear. So you can't, your example for, say one of the girls is struggling socially, you can't be like, I'll demonstrate how courageous I am socially, because it's not. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And you've got to remember, so the AFL football player that's running out on the ground is not really being courageous. You running out on the ground for the Collingwood Grand Final, that's courageous because you have fear. Now, they'll have a little bit of fear, but they'll have healthy levels of anxiety about it that increases their performance. What you're trying to find is the things that you care about. So you can't just be like, I'm going to become a ballerina because, but it's got to be something you're interested in getting better at and talk about it and then role model it and role model the recovery, have conversations about it. Every single emotion that we struggle with, we have 3 ways that we help kids with it. It's how we support them when they're struggling with that emotion. It's how we talk about that emotion in times of calm. And it's how we role model our own challenges with that emotion. The emotion that courage is trying to overcome is fear. So show them examples of where you have fear. I fear with lots of things,
Go on.
And well, I have, I have fear. God, without opening up Pandora's box.
Okay.
There's definitely things that I have fears with. I have fears with confrontation without getting angry. I, have fears about, insecurities about myself. I can't have conversations with Evie about that yet. She's too young. But what I can try and show her is, for example, physical things that I'm doing and saying I'm a bit scared to do this thing. For example, going out and climbing something or jumping over something or things like that, and talking about how it's making me feel, what it's doing in my body, and then thinking about how we do like deep breathing and stuff like that, and then I do it and nail it, or I do it and fail at it. And then I will have, role model that and experience that with her. And I very purposely go out and do that. With younger kids, it's all about, like we talked about, before they're 8, 9 years of age, courage is a lot about physical things. It's just when you get older, they become more about moral and psychological components of courage. How do I stand up for what I believe in? Those are conversations that you save until kids are mid to late primary school. The younger kids, a lot of it is about, I'm nervous about doing this fun run. Like I've never really run before. I'm really scared about it. That's not a fear thing for me. I enjoy doing those things, but I can't use fun runs as an example for a vet. It has to be something that scares me, that actually induces fear. Okay. But the conversation stuff comes later about morals and standing up for what's right and sticking up for yourself. And there's some beautiful stuff that might come up, the evidence around that that's existed for a while about what are the attributes about, being courageous in older kids and stuff like that. And we know a lot of them is, autonomy. Kids having autonomy is really important. That's a really important thing. And we're talking about that a lot here, aren't we? About how do I make sure I don't just force them to do stuff.
Yep.
And kids feel that from a very early age. And that's why a vet is challenging autonomy. But I also don't be like, well, you can run out on the street, because I want you to feel, I have to have firm boundaries on certain things, but I have to make sure that every day she experiences having a voice. And that will help her tell me when she's afraid, but also find the pathway through it with me. Anyway, I'm dragging the shorts.
No,
sorry.
I love it. No, sorry. No, not at all. Sorry, I lost my way there for a second. Thumb's going, oops. Hey, Billy, how do you help be courageous in the face of racism? I've got a young mixed kid getting bullied.
Yeah. So we see this a lot, and the important thing for that is the kid can't hold that, the parent can't hold it, the family can't hold it, the community holds that. So racism is this like prehistoric thing of like when we were in tribes, and people would say like from a like organism thing, organisms have to hold like to like, and we were threatened by difference. Do you know what I mean?
Okay. Oh, yeah. Rightio, yeah.
Yeah, but
Makes
that's
sense.
like
Yeah,
a species,
no.
you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, totally.
Whatever
Yeah.
sees the different thing and goes, what the hell's that? Gets scared, gets defensive, becomes insecure. Threat is a primitive way to deal with fear. It's the same as what we're talking about. I don't want to get on my soapbox too much, but all these guys that are like, I'll intimidate other people when I'm afraid, and I'll put fear into them, and then it becomes contagious. And we go, the only answer I have to fear is to intimidate other people to become hostile. Racism is a form of that. It's fear and it's bigotry and it's all these awful things. With everything as a society, what we need to do, and not just as a society, if your kid is struggling with screen time, if your kid's in an antisocial group, whatever, to shut something down, put something better in its place.
Yeah.
And so what you need to do is find things about that culture to celebrate. That community needs to lift. If it has any racism in that community, it needs to be pushed out by putting better stuff in. I get these phenomenal opportunities every day to meet kids and families from all these different cultures, and I take it as an opportunity to learn about it and celebrate something about that. You speak 2 languages, your language brain is way better than mine, even though you're only 9. I wish I spoke 2 languages. You're going to get to go to that country. You've got a part of that culture. How amazing is that? And I share a little bit of mine. What I'm trying to do is build up the resilience for that kid in understanding that there might still be experiences where people who are, whatever, without being too derogatory, but they have an antidote to it and saying, this is actually something I celebrate about myself. It's a really important thing, but you just have to make sure the kid doesn't hold that courage on their own. They don't have to face that on their own, and the society needs to take responsibility for it.
Yep. So if it's happening, you might work with the school and the teacher. And
work with the school, work with people in the community that are doing phenomenal stuff in this space, but try and do it proactively. Don't wait. If you don't have racism in your school, your community or whatever, don't say we're sweet. Go, how do we look around and say, how do we celebrate the diversity of our culture and how do we show that it actually strengthens us and makes us stronger? It's the same as neurodiversity. It's the same as gender stuff. Like, it's wild that we wait for bad stuff to happen and then go, whoops, we better do something about this. All this negative stuff that's out there, some of the role modelling is awful and toxic, but we need to put better stuff up there. Without naming any individuals, some of the people have global presence on what masculinity is, the racism stuff, the gender stuff. They should be so easy for us to replace with something better, and it blows my mind that we can't. It's wild.
Sad.
It's wild. It's a big part of Guiding Growing Minds is like pushing that stuff out.
Yep.
It's unhealthy. It's worsening our community. It's putting people at physical risk, and it's increasing our mental illness in the community.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry, that was a short.
Not at all. It's a great answer, by the way. Like about the celebration of cultures. And replacing it. Yeah, I don't think practically like that, I'll be honest. I think it's just a really great, I go, oh, no, yeah, I can see how. Do you know what I mean?
It's funny though, because you celebrate so many different cultures.
Yeah, but I'm not deliberate about many, maybe I
walk around this neighbourhood with you and you go, yeah, this was a really big Greek community and see how this style, and they take so much pride in the growth of vegetables in their gardens, and that's you celebrating a culture. Yeah. This community is stronger because of that part of its history, and if it loses it, it'll be weaker because of it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
But that's you celebrating cultural diversity.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. But I don't know. Yeah, righto. Billy, got 4 more shorts. Billy, how do you approach, I can't do it, when they haven't tried and you know they can with your support?
So what do you think? Do you say, yes, you can?
No. Maybe. I would.
So what do you do instead of tell them?
Show them?
Mm. Yeah. How do you show them?
By pointing to things that they've done that makes me confident of why they'll be able to do it.
Yeah, subtly.
Subtly.
Yeah. Opportunities with less demand and more support.
Opportunities with less demand and more support.
God. With the specific thing that they think they can't do, but do it subtly. Don't be like, yes, don't battle them on it.
That's good. What was the phrase again?
Opportunities with less demand and more support.
Yes.
Mate, I was doing all this on the fly when you asked me to repeat something.
Well, I lose it. I'm like a goldfish.
Yeah, cool. We record it though, so.
I love. I got like a timestamp thing where I go, come back to 32 minutes. Hey Billy, that's a ripper. I think social courage is harder to teach than physical courage. Mm-hmm. Would love to know how you teach standing up in social wrongs.
Yeah. So you've got to be really careful doing it with kids like younger than middle primary school. So like kids younger than like 8, 9, 10. They do get this. They get this like kick just before then in like they can have empathy for something they can't see. That happens like I think it's like 6, 7, 8. They will, and that's why like a lot of kids will become vegetarians and stuff because they're like, we can't eat animals and all this stuff because they start developing their moral identity. But yeah, you've just got to be really careful because kids don't develop their full cognitive frontal lobe capacity of reasoning and problem solving and stuff till their mid-20s. So you've got to be really careful that we never expect that they'll be able to do what we struggle with in that space. But do it gently with support, role model it, lift up examples of people in the community that do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I 100% agree with that question. That's why so many of us are stuck in just idolising examples of physical courage.
Yeah.
Because it's
easy
more,
to point at.
Yeah, it's easy to point at.
Yeah.
Look at that person that...
Can watch it on a highlight.
Yeah, did the ninja whatever. Amazing. They ran across it so fast. They were so quick and all that stuff. There's people doing that every day from a moral and psychological perspective. Every single day. And we've got to remember as well, fear and courage is not determined by the observer. It's determined by the person who's overcoming that. Some kids are courageous just in the fact that they will get through that day because of what the fear that they're facing and the amount of courage they're having to come up with just to leave their bedroom.
Yeah, exactly. It's your point. Like, people want a kid back at school 6 hours a day, but they won't leave the bedroom. It's like, well...
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a different example than the footy players. I feel like I keep going to it. But it's easy to look at that person and go, how courageous are they? They took that mark. Even though they were so sore and they've been playing, I know they've got a knee injury. Actually, I meet a kid every single day that's more courageous than that. And they're struggling. They're not attending school. They're self-harming.
They won't be celebrated for what they achieve.
Yeah, but no one looks at them and goes, aren't you phenomenal? And that's what we need to lift. That's the psychological courage that is in every single community. There are thousands of people doing that every single day, that they're facing something that they're afraid of. And and you and I are very lucky that we're in privileged positions where we don't have that, but I meet them every day. And they're teachers and they're maternal and child health nurses and they're social workers and they're supporting people on their own with limited resources and they still show up. It's phenomenal.
Good. Hey, Billy, when a child has a hit to their confidence and struggles to show that courage again, how can I help?
Yeah, that's not courage, that's resilience. So courage is like deciding that I'm going to face a fear and bringing the calm and focus and skill set and mastery to this is how I'm going to face that fear, and not overcoming the fear sometimes, but holding the fear and being able to walk through whatever you need to. Resilience is picking yourself up. Resilience is overcoming adversity. Something awful has happened, and that's resilience. And we should do a whole podcast on it because it's the most poorly interpreted word in the mental health space, I think. So we should do something on it. But that's resilience. That's not courage. And you have to build resilience before you can do courage, and people that have struggled with that. There is a component of, yes, it might happen again, and that's fear and stuff like that. But you have suffered a harm and you need to heal from that and to learn the skills and the elasticity to come back from it before you can be courageous again. But that's another future topic that maybe we'll get to this year.
Maybe. 15 episodes left this year.
Counting down. Should I be worried?
Don't be. Where would I go? Where would I go?
Henry, I think we need to leave Melbourne.
Billy, what other board games would you recommend to cultivate courage?
I attend on that just to lighten it.
You know what I get scared playing? A bit of Cluedo. That's scary.
Yeah, really.
There's always someone getting clipped with an inanimate, with a household item that's in my house.
Do you remember the, because we grew up at the same time, do you remember there was that, I never bought it, but there was that like horror board game, and it used to have on the VHS cassettes.
One of my closest mates, this old man invented it.
Yeah, really?
You've met him.
Bang, claim to fame.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. It's not called Nightmare?
Something like that, yeah.
It is. Yeah. Oh my God.
And
I've
the
never
ad was
played
always
it.
like,
Oh
you're on your own in the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can hear something coming.
Yeah.
And it was like a board game and all these kids terrified. I never played
Isn't
it.
that amazing? Yeah.
Yeah. Probably a bridge too far.
Yeah, no, don't play that.
But yeah, I just thought it was such, I don't know if they were being serious or not, but it was just such a great riff on the movie. And Jumanji being this like symbol of overcoming it. And I'm still waiting for a bit of feedback of how great my interpretation of Jumanji was, that he doesn't go into the board game, he goes off to boarding school. So just check if all those people who sent that email, and I haven't got it yet.
If it's sitting in drafts, can someone please forward one to Billy? Popcultureparenting@gmail. Just say sorry, I forgot to hit
So
send.
proud of myself with that. That and the ludicrous
I
joke.
might have to create a little fake email address. Send that through. Hey, Billy, I don't even want to look at the clock. Don't want to look at the clock. We're going to go. So, Billy, we're going to do feedback.
Yeah, let's do some rapid fire. I'll go first.
Go.
This is some stuff that people have sent in. There's a few of them. Thank you for your latest podcast in Cultivating Courage. This is more of a reflection than a question, and thanks for knowing we're trying the right avenues. My partner and I love your podcast to reflect on our lives as part-time parents and when we can control and what we can control in our care. Both children can be quite reserved and often fearful of new situations and generally cautious while trying new things. A big fear of failure, especially for the 5-year-old who's struggling at school with transitions, and anything new is met with, I can't do that. And your point of he can't control the narrative of breaking down, he can control the narrative of breaking down rather than the unknown that he may succeed. The advice of creating communities for children has resonated with us. This year, the 5-year-old has been enrolled in Auskick and the 7-year-old in calisthenics, the two hobbies that we loved our whole lives. As a way of leading by example, we've both gone back to our respective sports, and as a way to show the kids that being part of a community outside of school is really important. The kids came to cheer on their dad in his first C-grade game to watch him pull a hamstring. I've gone back to trying to do the splits in calisthenics to pull a calf muscle. Regardless of these setbacks, the kids can't stop talking about how excited they are to try these new sports. I do really appreciate the effort that goes into the podcast and create a community for us parents and step-parents in my case to find answers to the struggles we have in our home. They start this week and I can't wait to be a part of their growth, and if these sports aren't for them, begin the search to find what does engage their interest. Beautiful.
That's pretty great.
It's always a bit of humour. It always brings me in.
It's fantastic. All right, we've got a few more here. Hey guys, firstly, thank you for a vulnerable and real episode. The way you both are open with your lived experiences is enriching, empowering of our lives. Thank you. My husband has some feedback or a listener tip. He's enjoyed listening to you both at 1.2 speed setting. However, he did say at 1.5 speed is a little too scary and does not recommend it. I think my biggest takeaway from this episode is to change the narrative around the courage and how we set up our kids to overcome fear. Our eldest, 5-year-old, who is in prep, is incredibly empathetic but is not particularly courageous. It had always confused me as to how she could be empathetic but also at the same time not particularly be courageous. I've actually started therapy to overcome my own personal fears and use the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 calm technique often. This has actually been instrumental in helping our daughter overcome her fears. We've also started using saying, "We will see." Bluey 2024 has significantly helped diffuse my daughter's fears. To give an example, she doesn't like going to bed by herself and she doesn't like being away from mum and dad. We use the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 calm technique as she is generally in tears. This calms the environment and gives her space for conversation. She will say things like, "But what if I wake up and I am scared?" To which we generally respond with, "We will see, but we are always here and we love you." I guess I don't specifically have a question, but I feel that this may practically help some other parents out there with an orca child who is empathetic but needs a little boost in the encouragement department. Sorry, I have to go. My dog just ate my 2-year-old's poop and it started puking. Oh my God.
It's great, isn't it?
Yep.
So yeah, do you know that technique? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 calm. So it's like a grounding mindfulness exercise that helps kids and adults come into the moment. And I think it's 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste, or something like that. So you look around the room and it's to try and bring you to the presence. So you look around and go, what are 5 things you can see? What are 4 things you can touch? What are 3 things that you can smell? Yeah, whichever way it works. But it's a grounding exercise that kind of tries to bring you into the moment. It's a really good mindfulness tool.
Sorry, Billy was watching me do it then. You're probably sitting there going, why is he talking like that to him?
And I'm next.
Go, Billy.
So a couple more of these and then we will fly through. So the next one. Good evening, Dr. Billy and Nick. Thank you so much for your fantastic podcast. I'm a reasonable new listener, but wanted to share a story about courage and my amazing mum. When I was in year 8, I was offered a place at another school. It was an amazing opportunity, but I was content where I was. I was blindsided by the offer and genuinely shocked that I'd been accepted. My darling mum took me out for a coffee, which was a rare and special grown-up treat back then. We talked it over, just the two of us. After a while, my mum calmly said, "Do you want me to be the parent and take this decision out of your hands?" I said yes, and she replied, "Where are you going then?" It may just be in hindsight, but I'm pretty sure I knew exactly what her decision was always going to be. I'm not sure I'll explain it clearly, but in one moment, my mum managed to communicate so much. I love you, I know you, I respect your autonomy, but know this choice is asking too much of you. How can I help you have the courage to take this chance? You don't need to do this by yourself. And importantly, for a teenage girl, I can play the villain if you need to save face in front of your friends. Thank you again, Nick, thank you again for a podcast filled with so much vulnerability, joy and kindness. It's amazing. One of the biggest things I miss about my mum is just getting her help on that. I leaned into it so much with that stuff. And so, yeah, it's an amazing example of like, yes, it's about how do we write it with them and how do we take the hits for them sometimes.
That's amazing. God, that's what you want. You want that takeaway from your kids, don't you, 40 years from now?
Yeah. Yeah, you and I often talk about that.
That's kind of the goal, isn't it? That they go, God, in 1 second, Mum did this, and this. You're like, shh.
Yeah.
Gold standard, eh?
Yeah. Too far in now, but I'm going to be highly accountable. Parenting podcast, parenting book. Evie's going to be like, it's all lies.
The expose. Yeah. So last one before we get into the longs. Hey guys, huge fan of the pod. Particularly loved hearing about the group of dads on a building site listening to the podcast whilst working. I think that's awesome. I thought I'd email a story about courage, or lack of, and my childhood. I remember a particular incident whilst on holidays with my twin brother and dad. We used to have the tennis court where we were staying, and it was my job to book it. I remember having an almost physical reaction. I couldn't approach the reception as I asked if we could use it. My brother pushed me to try to do it, but in the end, after getting close to tears, he did it for me. Interestingly, there's still times in my adulthood where the same feeling arises. In relation to my kids, how do you give them the confidence and courage to approach unknown situations, particularly in a situation where there may be some fear of not getting a positive outcome? I'm very aware of not asking them to do something I found hard to do, but also understand that learning through experience is all part of it.
Yeah, beautiful. There's a lot of that stuff that comes up. I don't know about for you, but a lot of stuff comes up that just takes me back to childhood. And that's, sometimes it's because we've repressed stuff. Sometimes it's because it's interesting. There's a lot of science on the way that we have different memories when our adrenaline and cortisol is firing, and that's what happens with a lot of trauma is those things. And then they just come back unknowingly when you get the same stimulus.
Happens to me in this podcast weekly even, just thinking about the topics. You've worked so hard on each episode, you know sort of these, and maybe you're sitting there and the way I was doing the work that you do to be like, this is a great question, people are going to benefit, and you get to absorb it, and maybe you have it in that moment. But when I go through it here and you start talking about things, I'm like, I just can't get that feeling. Anyway.
Yeah. That's why you're such a talent, mate, because you're doing this on the fly and still producing it beautifully. Now, just before we get to the longs, this is a nice little lighthearted feedback. Hi, Nick and Billy. Hello from Los Angeles. Firstly, big fan. My wife has started to make fun of me about how much I listen to your podcast and how often she catches me crying while doing the dishes with my headphones in, listening to you guys. Something about the water and the bubbles and the deep cuts of childhood development that really kick off the waterworks for me. I just love that. Such a short, amazing bit of feedback. But anyway, the longs, and we won't make them too long.
LA. When are we going? Are we moving to LA?
Yeah, surely. Sure. It's another email that I haven't seen yet.
So if you've got that.
And very happy to be ourselves in the in the series or slash movie.
They'd certainly want at least me for my voice work. Not sure that front of the camera, certainly behind it, near it. Just not smack bang in the middle.
Mate, it's all about genuine stuff now. So we're definitely genuine.
That's a backhander. Hey, Billy, let's go. We've got the longs here. So let's rip in.
Yeah, I'll just give short answers to all of them.
Sure.
Yeah. I'll try.
Hey, guys. My wife and I absolutely love the pod. You guys have been such an absolute blessing to us and the confidence and our confidence as ourselves as parents. It'd be great if you could continue the podcast for the next 20 to 40 years thanks in advance. I'm writing this email at about 1 a.m. local time, holding an 8-month-old, putting them to sleep in the same room as a 3.5-year-old brother who tends to wake up terrified in the middle of the night if someone isn't with him. For the last several months, either myself or my wife sleeps in the room with him, which, if I'm honest, is usually absolutely wonderful. He's such a sweet and cuddly boy, and I know one day when he's older we'll treasure these nights. That's what I tell myself, at least. I think this is some kind of attachment issue that we're working through. Recently, my wife and I have been talking about how to bring things up, like what to do if he gets lost in public, how to ask for help if he can't find mum or me, or what to do if someone he doesn't know tries to get him to go with them. Specifically, how do I explain to my boy what to do in these terrifying situations that will not absolutely terrify him should something like this happen, potentially making him more fearful that he's going to wake up more at night or turn around one day at the park and we just won't be there. I've done a lot of things some might find scary, spent 8 years in the US Marine Corps and now teach people to fly small airplanes. But the thought of my child finding themselves alone or being hurt fills me with the most fear of anything I can imagine. Ooh, yeah. How do we talk with children about these scary hypotheticals to give them confidence to the extent possible, to deal with challenging situations without overwhelming them with fear of the unknown? America is kind of a mess. I remember my parents talking to me about the Columbine school shooting in '99. I was in middle school at the time and being so scared I found it difficult to sleep for a while. Definitely did not intend for this to be a long question, but you're welcome to trim it up and any advice would be appreciated. Jumanji, the original, is absolutely one of my favourite movies and I miss Robin Williams so much. He had such a gift. Thank you again so much for all that you do. With love from the States, wish you guys and your families health and all the best. P.S. A related Grizzy. We were out to lunch at a restaurant recently and I had the baby to my left in a high chair and my son to my right at the table with me, my wife sitting across. At one point, I'm looking at the baby while my son dropped something on the floor to go down and got down from the table to try and grab it. And when I turned from the baby to look back, I couldn't see him. And he was and apparently just immediately disappeared. Immediately, I jumped to my feet and shot around the table, full on red alert mode. Of course, there he was on the floor just standing up and my wife had watched the whole thing, able to see the boy the whole time. I looked around and caught a few glances from the other patrons at the restaurant and sat back down relieved and embarrassed. If nothing else, my wife was entertained. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, totally. So there's a few things in this. Yeah, one is you can, a lot of us have fears about like the worst case scenario or awful stuff that's happened to us and we try and prepare our kids, but we're kind of over catastrophizing like that stuff, but it's understandable because you can see this amazing dad has a heightened sense of fear. The Grizzy has it in it as well. He's out of his sight and he's running around the table. So he's just really, because he's with the stuff he's gone through, probably trauma about being in warfare or all the training and all the risk stuff and the things he needs to think about. But also there's been awful things that have happened in the world and it's very hard not to put, you have this option, don't you? You like think about what if that was my kid? What if I was at that shopping centre when that happened? What if my kid went to that school when that occurred? What would I have done? I couldn't have done anything. I might have lost the most important thing to me in the world. Or you just ignore it and you bury it and you go, I can't think about that. I can't face that reality. But what this dad is trying to do is how do I give the skill set? Now, there is a way that you can do it appropriately, and I even did it last night with Evie. Like Evie, when we say goodbye, no matter how cold it is or raining it is, we have to go and say goodbye to the person who looks after them during the day. We wave, and then she does like 5 sprints along the sidewalk, just like hot, one property length kind of thing to the next driveway because we're practicing that. It has to do it. But I was like watching our weeds are so bad in our front yard that they're going through seasonal changes. So there's like, as we're hitting autumn here, I'm like, oh, that's great. The weeds have got leaves that are going brown. So I was like, that's a bad sign. So long story short, I was like, oh, Evie, we'll do more running, but let's come back in and I just want to grab some stuff to do some gardening while we're doing the running. And I'm holding Charlie because I'm like, I can do this and I'm trying to multitaask. And she's like, I'll stay out here.
Doesn't sound like you doing 3 things at once.
Yeah, it's the only option. I think I'd struggle to do one thing at once. Anyway, Evie was like, I'll stay here And I was like, you can't. And she said, how come? And I saw the opportunity to say to her, and I was like, well, because it might not be safe. And she's like, why? And I was like, well, there's cars and there might be people we don't know. And she's like, so? Like, she was processing it in her head. And I was like, well, because we've always got to have mummy or daddy with us when we're with someone we don't know, you know, because we just don't know them. Now, I'm not going to be like, because they could kidnap you or because they could hurt you and all that stuff, because that's going too far.
Gotcha.
But what I'm trying to do is build that rule in with her and say, this is just what happens. And I'll take her to where she needs me to go that's appropriate in explaining it. You know, I don't just say because. I go because, you know, I want to make sure you're safe and stuff like that. So it's just a good example of like the appropriate level without putting the fear and anxiety in it. And you don't have to have the fear and anxiety to learn. You often won't learn once you start getting scared about it. You know, how do you be safe in swimming in the water if you're just like, because there might be a shark at the beach or because you might drown if you're in the pool. Like, we don't want to scare kids. We want to realise that we have to build their mastery and confidence and do it in a way that they're calm and actually helps them. So that's why that question is there, because it's such a good example of us bringing in our worst fears and going, I'm so terrified that how do I protect them from these awful things ever happening?
Okay. Beautiful. Yeah, I like that. Don't just focus on like the worst outcome.
Yeah. What's an appropriate level of skill development that I want to give this kid and give them an explanation, understanding for it?
And lucky Evie presented that opportunity this week.
Yeah.
Amazing. Hey, Billy, number 2. Hi, Nick and Billy. Big fan. Might already know that due to my consistent questions and emails. Love the episode on courage. It's an interesting one and got me thinking. I will break it down into a few parts. My upbringing was filled with lots of anxiety. Parents migrated from a different country that was filled with conflict and civil war. They were next-level helicopter parents. Dad showed his courage through anger and aggression. I say this without judgment, but it's the only way they knew how to parent, and Dad had some emotional regulation issues when he was younger. Building courage myself was a tough one. A lot of it was tied to my self-esteem as well. I was scared to do a lot of things. For example, join a new sport, meet new people, put myself out there. Looking back for me, sport was a definite contributor to both courage and confidence. Being good at something, having a community around you, and people that encourage you. However, I stopped sports when I was a teenager because we moved houses and suburbs. So, you know, once again, my courage and resilience took a hit. I really don't think I gained it back until I was an adult in my 20s, who went overseas with a couple of friends and then relocated to a different state to complete more studies. When I was away from the nest and forced to be independent, I slowly built myself up. Putting yourself in situations which make you uncomfortable, I found would foster courage. I wouldn't love it while I was in it, but on reflection, it was always a reason I grew as a person and took more risks. The story about the boy at the surf that was pushed out to go made me reflect. The story about the boy at the surf that was pushed to go out and made me reflect on how my husband and I deal with our kids on that front. We have 4 kids. Our philosophy is they were never forced into doing something they don't feel comfortable doing. We acknowledge it and then only encourage it at a different opportunity. We also increase the child's exposure to that situation. For example, my daughter being scared to put her head underwater, so we just increased the amount of times we would go to the pool, got in the bath, and more often to not put pressure on her and just made it fun. Great suggestion. The last part has to do with my work. I'm a physiotherapist that works in rehabilitation. I work with clients that have been through physical trauma. They are scared and have no confidence to move how they used to move. So we used to use a lot of part practice, stems from motor learning and control, with tasks. Break the task down into manageable steps and then slowly join the task back together to a manageable goal. This might be slow, but it is very effective in slowly gaining the courage to complete tasks and appear challenging or scary. I thought that was really transferable to how we manage our kids. Break it down, provide support, encourage at the right time and where appropriate. That's my 2 cents worth. I guess this is what I do, but I appreciate some of it might not be super complex. So I guess, is there anything else that I can cultivate to build courage that can be added to my toolbox? Anything I've missed? Really want our kids to grow up to have courage to speak up, participate, and not be scared to fail.
Beautiful. God, there's some beautiful stuff in there, and it's making me think about things that I didn't when I first picked it. So it's amazing. It's that, what are the steps? What are the small achievable steps to getting better at this thing, understanding that fear is a component of it, and physical therapy is, we see a lot of kids with mental illness which will have functional components where, they can't walk. And, there is nothing like organic that causes that, but in their mind, they cannot walk. It's not there. They're choosing that they can't walk. So mental illness is so debilitating, their anxiety or depression or whatever's happening, that it functionally comes out in their body in a way that they can't walk anymore.
Really?
Really, 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 really common. Seen lots of kids with that.
No. I shouldn't be surprised. I'm like, wow.
There's a stigma around it. It's like, but like this person says, the answer is not in, mate, you can walk. Just there's nothing wrong with your legs, get up there. What they actually do is physiotherapy. They build their strength. They go through exercises to really slowly show them and build back their capacity to use those parts of their body. And we should do it with every single component of our body and minds. Is how do we not say, mate, you can do this. What are you talking about? Get over it. We should say, cool, we're going to step you back through this slowly to get you to the point where you're back where you should be and reaching your potential. The pool is great. We've done this with Evie, and it's a bit of, hopeless, me being a bit hopeless, and I should know better. But Evie was, up until about a month ago, wasn't willing to put her head under the water. And I was saying, look at it. I'd say to Annalise, this is how bad I am behind the scenes. I was like, look at that kid who's younger than Evie, like jumping off the side, putting their head under. Look at them swimming. Look at them doing that. And I was like, Evie should be there. What are we doing? Struggling about it. Ridiculous. So, I was just like, oh, my God. Because, because we're big beach people and, we spend a lot of time at the beach and we love it. And the big thing I think I've talked about where I really scared Evie with the surf. So I was like, I've really got to do this. And do you know what happened is we just kept going to the pool. Yeah. We'd ask Evie, what do you want to do? And she kept saying the pool. And we were like, God, it's a crummy day, but we're going to go. And we would go and we just had fun there. And then about 2 times ago, she just stood there. We took all the pressure off. We stopped telling her to put her head under. We stopped trying to pressure the goggles that she picked that never lets us put on her head. And she just all of a sudden put her head under. And then we went, oh my God, that's amazing. And now she just puts her head under all the time. She's swimming and it's just, we made it fun, took the pressure out. And it was Annalise, if I'm honest.
Isn't swimming one of the most amazing things?
Yeah, we had dozens of questions about swimming.
If you go back a year from now, my daughter's 10 months older than your daughter, my youngest. 10 months older, yeah. And my other one. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Something about swimming watching it evolve is the most fascinating thing, from like pure struggle to then one day you can kind of just go and it's exposure. It's certainly exposure, but you're like, is this working?
Yeah.
I'm honest. I'm sitting there going, is this working? Are we getting anywhere here? And then all of a sudden, maybe it is that thing. They just they don't feel any pressure. They just go and do something and you're just like,
yeah. No pressure, opportunity, fun. Yeah. Those are the ingredients.
It is quite deliberate. I see your point. The point. You can be quite deliberate, but it's when you're in it, you're like, this is a slog.
Yeah.
And then it happens. Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah. So it's amazing. But we had so many questions about it, but that's the part that person has given the answer to all those people.
And I think this is going to sound stupid. I got friends who are from other countries and swimming's like a real struggle for them. We don't even really see it. I think in other places, like we'd probably get those questions from other places that, like we live on a big island here. Anyway.
Why is that? It goes back to the racism thing.
What?
There's a cultural influence in Australia. We all swim. We all enjoy swimming. Yeah. It's a big part of our culture.
Beach culture.
All that stuff. So that's why it's easier. Whereas if you're in a community where it's harder to do, it's not as big a part of the culture, all that stuff, then you're up against something that's more difficult as a parent. That's like, I really want my kid to get good at swimming.
Yeah. And then pressure on something that's tough. Anyway. Yeah. Sorry, I've got a broken phone over here. I've got to punch a code in each time. So people that have like those fingerprint ones, enjoy that. I wish I had it. Hey, greetings, Billy and Nick. As always, thanks for a wonderful episode on an amazing topic. I've been listening to old episodes and haven't had the chance to write in yet, but something happened this morning that I'm hoping to get your input and guidance on. I'm a co-parent of 2 boys, 9 and 7, who constantly keep me on my toes. My oldest has just started this year's season of baseball. This is the 4th year playing and he's previously loved it and was really looking forward to playing. He's been to 2 practices and for some reason has been struggling with his batting. This has never been an issue for him in the past. So he is understandably frustrated by it. He's also a boy who only likes to do things he's good at and is quick to give up on things that he's not. We faced a similar situation this year with basketball, but with coaching and made him stick with it. He eventually caught up with the sport and grew to really enjoy it, even receiving the Most Improved Player award at the end of the season. 2 years ago, I did let him quit soccer because the coach was abrasive and I didn't think it was a healthy learning environment. Now, I grew up with the mentality that if you start something, especially something like team sports, you don't get to quit, no matter what. It was very hard for me to let go to that notion and allow him to quit. But again, it was more a mental health issue, and I stand by the decision, though I am heartbroken that his opinion of soccer is so tainted now. Anyway, we were talking about going to baseball practice later today, and he was insisting that he's not going. I was trying to explain that I'm not letting him quit just because he's struggling and trying to remind him of how basketball season went. Good. I was trying to tell him that it takes courage to work through things that we are struggling with, but he immediately cut me off, basically saying, blah, blah, blah. I stopped the conversation, realising that he wasn't in a place to hear it in the moment. But I'm hoping I can get through to him later in the day. My fear that he's going to literally fight me to not go to basketball tonight. My fear is that. Even while we're talking this morning, he was pushing his arms against me in a threatening nature. A little background on my son, he started to show some extremely angry and violent behaviour only at home when he was about 5 years old, for no reason that my then husband and I were able to figure out. It got so bad that I had to lock my younger son and I in a room to keep safe. But then he would trash things in the house and literally rip the door off the hinges by continuing to body slam it. Eventually, he ended up taking everything out of his room other than his bed, so he was in a safe space to put him there during those outbursts. When we finally got him to see a therapist, she diagnosed him with anxiety and instructed us to restrain him during his violent behaviours. This led to the scare of DCF, Child Protective Services, when my then husband crossed the line trying to restrain him, which was when we learned that restraining wasn't appropriate guidance. Through them, my son was connected with another therapist. I did a lot of work with wonderful people through the paediatricians to help understand his anxiety and personality type and how to handle it. He's come a long way since then, but will still resort to mild violent behaviour like pushing his arm into me this morning when he feels insecure and threatened. And I struggle with how to deal with these episodes. Do I ignore him so as not to escalate the behaviour? Do I address it and risk making it worse? Anytime I touch him when he's like this, I think it triggers his PTSD of being restrained and he goes into fight mode. To make matters worse, my new partner feels that I'm getting pushed around by my son and struggles with how to help me in these situations. Sorry for the long history. I just felt like it was important to give a bit of context. I guess my question is, how can I cultivate courage when my son's anxiety prevents him from hearing me out? I know he can just get past. I know he can do it if he can just get past this hurdle and he'll have a great season. Thanks in advance for your future guidance. I look forward to learning more about parenting through these difficult situations. Also, if you haven't done so yet, an episode on sibling interaction would be greatly appreciated. We've done sibling.
Yes, we have. The Legends of the
Fall with Brad.
Yeah, we spent half the time talking about it. Good looking, Brad, please. But there was some useful stuff in there.
It was at his height. What a rooster.
Tristan. So, yeah, tough situation, and how even courageous to send in that question with that open honesty about some of the stuff that went wrong when they were initially restraining the child and kind of that stuff. So, yeah, it goes back to the point about this kid probably needs help from some therapists because his anxiety is so overwhelming and his sympathetic nervous system is kicking in so much that he's going into fight mode, and he's holding outside of the home environment because he feels less safe there but you want to give him the strategies. The co-regulation, because I feel like this person has just kind of catching up, the co-regulation and mental health first episodes are probably really helpful for this parent, as well as the anxiety one. But yeah, we can't expect courage when kids are overwhelmed. Their brains are flooded with stress hormones, and they will not be able to logically progress towards something courageous when they're in that mode. He is signaling through his violent behaviour that he's having an emotion that he can't deal with, and that's the way that he signals help. The first step is give him a better way to signal help that's less destructive to him. Give him a way to show him that you're there to support him. You will be unconditionally there and responsive to him, work on all the attachment stuff, but try and find a better way for him to signal he needs help, understanding that he's got a vulnerability to touch because of the restraint that happened. But with time, like we talked about in the learning episodes, with time, his learning will be transformed from it being something negative that's going to hold him and escalate him and make him worse to something that comforts him and co-regulates him and brings him back down.
Yeah, right.
That's the answer to that.
Yeah, it's a tough situation.
Really tough.
Complexity in history there.
Yeah. Yeah, really, a lot of kids. That's a classic kid we see in clinic.
Okay.
The violent little kid, like preschool, early primary school. It's always a signal. There's always a reason. Find the reason. You cannot address the behaviour until you find the reason that emotion is overwhelming them that's below it.
Yeah. And it's just an emotion that's gone too far.
Yeah, but they're just signalling. Every behaviour is a signal. It's an opportunity to connect. It's communication, especially the negative ones that are tough, especially those. We shouldn't try and stop a behaviour. We should try and understand it and then guide them to one that's more healthy.
Place it.
Mm. Thank you.
G'day, legends. Sorry in advance, this ended up far longer than expected. Very much grateful for you guys taking the time. Epic movie. Scared the pants off me as a kid. Incredible topic. Long-time listener, first-time questioner. Absolutely adore this podcast. As a high school music teacher, I share this with colleagues, parents, students and friends. It's been a real game changer. I've been totally changed the way I focus on my energy at work, and it's having the best results for the kids in class and in my pastoral care group. My classes feature a larger than I would normally encounter number of kids with trauma backgrounds and diagnosed anxiety and other disorders including FASD, ODD, ASD and ADHD. The music class is an epic place for them to fit in and practice courage in a safe space, and the other kids are so incredibly supportive. I have seen students who can't barely enter the school gates flourish in music. However, despite these kids being incredibly talented, including the neurotypical students who aren't presenting any symptoms of trauma, etc., they don't want to perform in the school community for fear of being ridiculed. Amazingly, our most courageous and resilient kids just do it anyway. And sadly, they do cop it sometimes from kids not involved in arts activities. I don't blame them for being reluctant to perform. The art is not a nice place sometimes. I certainly remember my time as a music student in a school that was one of the most prolific producers of AFL draftees. Let's just say the culture was not arts focused. Finally, the question. Nearly there, Nico. How do I and other educators help build courage for the community to open their minds? How do we foster a shared responsibility for the creation of safe spaces, especially in school, for kids to enact and practice courage? Our trait for having tall poppy syndrome here in Australia is so subconscious and prominent. I'm constantly working towards skills to promote the idea that it is courageous for students to perform or put out art, to do things that challenge ideas, but don't even know where to start on building the other ability to accept this as a courageous and on others' ability to accept that this is courageous and aspirational. This would take a fair whack of moral courage to do. It's so evident in society that we prop up our sports heroes almost to a fault with our young people. This hit home for me in the episode where you talked about the Spartans preparing young people for battle by teaching them arts and culture skills, not just brute force. I'm certainly going to be telling people more about that one. Great ep, and thanks as always. That's awesome. This feels like that part you were talking about the community being the most important.
Yeah.
Like,
So how do you do that?
God.
What does that look like at your school?
Hold on. I need to hang on. Sorry, just let me get my thoughts in order. So just one thing I want to point, this person does a good job. Everyone feels safe in the school, in the class to perform their brains out, which is awesome, and be vulnerable because performance is. I was a drama kid. Probably tell.
It's all making sense.
Just different. I didn't say I was a dramatic kid. So I was a drama kid.
Yeah.
And you do feel safe in that space, but outside of it. So I know this. And so, yeah, I just think that how do you do it?
How do you do it? When he's at school, loving drama, scared, terrified to do the performance, won't do it. I'm not talking about what you do with Winnie. What do you do as a community?
I'm not the person to ask because I didn't actually perform. So I had that same fear.
Yeah. So you don't put it on the kid. You put it on the school community.
Yep.
So there's a few things in this. You use one of those tools you can use is what's called social reference. I don't think we've talked about them before. They're the kids in a community, a school community usually, that will influence the behaviour of others. They're not always the popular kids. Heath Ledger in 10 Things I Hate About You is a social referent. He's not the popular kid, but what he does, everyone's watching him. And they've done studies where they'll ask who are the social referents in this school. They obviously don't ask the phrasing of that kids, but in high school, and they can pick them. And what you do is that you then bring them in and you say, this is a priority for us. How are we going to make the art culture a more safe space for the entire community? And you bring them in and you make them participate in it. They problem solve it. They're a big part of it, but they will make that transition easier.
What if that kid's reluctant to come in, doesn't want to do drama?
But there will be ones that are. They seek leadership opportunities. They've always got an altruistic component to them. They have a high moral and psychological courage. That's one of the key features of those social reference. That's why people watch them. So they're not the bullies. They're not the popular kids. They're the kids that will change behaviours. They can be popular. Reference. Social reference. There's amazing research on it, especially out of the UK.
This is fascinating. I've never thought or heard about this. Now I'm thinking back to school, my last year, who those were.
Yeah. It's interesting, and you'll know them. So you bring them in. The other thing, just to give this person, maybe just for this person, do you know Spartacus?
The Michael not the Kurt Douglas film.
Yeah, it's based on a phenomenal book. I've got 3 of my favourite books: East of Eden, Spartacus by Howard Fast, and Musashi. 2 of them are about real people. East of Eden isn't. Spartacus was a real person. I don't know if you know that. So he led a slave revolt against Rome. Started with, I think, 50 or 60 gladiators and got it to tens of thousands of slaves that led up against him. One of the beautiful things about Spartacus is he was a leader who was equitable. He's a great role model that we should be thinking about with this stuff. And he talked about the arts. He talked about showing physical love to male friends, about kissing each other. We should embrace our friends. We should share everything. He is idolised as this Spartan. He wasn't a Spartan. He was called Spartacus. He was idolised as this, ideal, physical, courageous, brave person into the fray. What he was a really loving, generous, equitable, he's a phenomenal leader. Do you know what he used to do first?
No.
He'd listen. Anytime he'd meet with a group and they were having conflict, all the slaves were struggling, they'd all brought together in conflict, he would listen to all of them before he spoke about anything. He used to keep all of the grain stores open, all of the weaponry open. Everyone was worried they would steal it. When they shared it, they realised they were all in this together and they were all equitable. Find leaders like that and elevate them for those reasons. It's a phenomenal book. It's got beautiful poetry all through it. I'm not going to read quotes out about it, but it's a good example of how do we find the leadership that elevates things like arts and the culture and love and, looking after each other. That is who we should be idolising, those people and those behaviours, not aggression, hostility, not even think about how much we elevate people for how good they are at fighting, how big and muscly they are, how beautiful they are, how good looking they are. We need to really start leaning in to those qualities and those virtues in people, because we've been doing it. That book was written a long time ago. Spartacus lived a long time ago. He's echoed through history because of that. All of the writings about him were from 100 years after him. They didn't write about him at the time. What we know about Spartacus is for long after his death, he echoed, not because of his physical presence, but for how courageous he was in morals and psychology. It's a phenomenal thing, and this teacher has an opportunity to do this. They're doing that because of their own childhood. They could have shied away from it, said, I'm not going to go into the arts. I know what my experience was like. But they're doing it, trying to scaffold it for these kids. And kids with a lot of the conditions that he listed, this is a safe haven and a sanctuary for them. and it can be the conduit for them being comfortable and building their self-esteem and courage to bring that out in the wider community. You just can't put it on them to do it. Everyone else has to.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is probably going to be one of our longest episodes. Sorry.
No worries, Billy. Hey, Billy, that's a ripping answer, and I think that has given that teacher good opportunity to actually go and do something about it, by the way.
Yeah, they're amazing, aren't they?
Yeah. God, she was back doing a bit of drama.
Mate, great way to role model some
I
courage.
was going to say, you just catch my voice at the start of that last question. I brought a lot to the role.
What do you think, you and me, improv? What do we do? From Shakespeare?
I don't know. No. Thou shalt not be doing Shakespeare, buddy. Hey, mate, let me bring a little bit more. I feel bad because sometimes I start a question and then, I'll just be sensible.
Okay.
Hey, Billy, question number 5 of 8.
Of 8.
Yeah,
we're getting
halfway. I have a question about cultivating courage and in particular the concept of kids being able to speak up for themselves. I have a naturally courageous 3-year-old girl. I've said for a while now that she has a lot of qualities that will be great when she's 18 years old, but they're very difficult to parent at the age of 3. For example, things like knowing what she wants and fiercely standing her ground, being extremely stubborn and outspoken, and won't take no for an answer. I was proud of her the other day at a birthday party. A slightly older boy had tackled her to the ground and pinned her arms down. I saw and started going over to intervene, but she didn't need my help. I heard her shout, "Stop that, get off me now. You don't play like that." The boy let go and walked off saying, "I'm going to play with someone else." However, I find myself walking a fine line on a daily basis. I think these qualities are great, and I don't want to stamp them out of her, as they will be advantageous for a teenager and beyond. However, we also need to survive family life, and there are a lot of hard no's, and I need to enforce in her now. For example, her not wanting to wear her shoes, not wanting to go to the toilet, but then having accidents, and not wanting to sit up for dinner and pack away toys. What I am doing currently is trying to praise her with "it can be her choice" and saying something like, "Thanks for telling me that's what you want." But when it's something that isn't her choice, trying to validate but explain why we need to. I understand you don't want to wear shoes today, but it's muddy outside and you'll get cold feet, and it's a rule at kinder, you need to wear them. However, I still see every now and then that God goodness, sorry guys. However, I still see every now and then that she will be starting to speak to argue back or make her views known and almost give up before she speaks. And that is where I am worried I am taking away her ability to speak up for herself. Any tips on how to navigate the line of what to say and how to make sure she can still maintain her strength and courage but understand where the rules are?
What do you think? You got anything?
Sorry,
go through this.
I just really struggled through that question. God, it's a tough one.
Yeah,
I think she's doing a pretty
Boys,
good job.
Winnie and Ronnie,
Yeah,
want to speak up, pushing back against stuff. How do you
Yeah.
make sure they maintain their voice while still making sure they, stick to certain things like meal times and bedtimes and things? It's really important we nail this. We've got 3 girls between the 2 of us.
Yeah, you're big on this.
This gets pushed down.
Yeah. I know you're really strong on this. I'm less concerned.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Yeah.
Because I think they're doing pretty well.
Yeah, totally.
So
I'm like the dad, the US Marine. I'm not like him in that factor. I'm like him in other ways where some of the experience I've had in my childhood make me heightened to how do I best prepare of it for them. But yeah, I think the trick with this is you don't need to flex on the hard nose. You need to increase the opportunities of autonomy and having a voice and having a say in changing the situation, especially when you're seeing that she's starting to hide her voice or be reluctant to speak up. So
can you balance it though? Like the mother sounds like they're doing everything to.
Yeah, exactly.
As a mum.
But just give them more opportunity to have autonomy.
So how do you do that beyond what they're doing though?
Well, you just keep doing it. But you so as always, led by the kid. The kid is shutting down. the kid is holding back, the kid is being reluctant to speak up, that is a sign they need more of it. Not that the parent is failing, just that they need more opportunities to have their voice heard and to influence the environment and what choices are made and all those things. We try and do this with Evie all the time. We give her opportunities where she has a say and we give her opportunities where she doesn't.
Give me some examples.
Well, on a different example, because we get stuck with this, it was really funny because Annalise actually gave me credit for this because I think a lot of the time she's like, oh, yeah, I wish you were that guy in real life. But yeah, Evie was really struggling. She was just fighting. So because we made the mistake of once, it wasn't me, it was the other parent, she shall not be named, who was struggling at mealtime on her own. I was doing a talk and just threw the iPad up with one of her favourite TV shows during dinner time to get her to eat. It worked. The problem is now, every mealtime, at the moment, every single time, tries to get it again because that boundary moved. It cost her nothing to check it. So she's asking for this show. She was really blowing up and it was a battle. Mum, Annalise and Evie were just in conflict about it. Evie was trying to hold her voice and say, no, I want this, screaming and all that stuff. Annalise was just being consistent and saying, no, she'd made a rule, we don't do that, we agreed on it, all this stuff, remember. But Evie was becoming so dysregulated that I can't stand this show, I won't name what it is. And Annalise said, oh, no, you can't either.
I know the show.
Yeah. Anyway, and does have a character that is defiant to the point of being annoying. But I just became the dad in that show. I put on the voice, I did everything, and it cut her out of that conflict and that negative cycle that she was in with her mum and brought her into it. And I had a conversation in that stupid character's voice with her and she ate all of her food, you know, because I wasn't in battle. We've got to try really hard to not be in battle with our kids. She still did what she wanted. She calmed down, she co-regulated, and she ate her food and enjoyed the experience. And yeah, Annalise was like, oh yeah, that was pretty impressive. So it was, yeah, which is rare, if I'm honest. That's for every one of those, there's 10 of the, you know, that other kid can swim and they're littler. So
yeah, I know. We'll do it.
Yeah, but yeah, just more opportunity. Beautiful, a phenomenal parent with great insight, great reflective practice. If the kid is shutting down, give them more opportunity for their voice to be heard and for it to influence the environment.
When can you start using like big sort of phrases? I tried 2 phrases on with the girls, one this morning. Like what you say, like comparison is the thief of joy. She is 6 next week, so is she ready?
Yeah, mate, if she's not, be worried. No, of
too
course
complex.
not. Can you use comparison as a thief of joy? To be more grateful for what you have?
I try to.
Mate, you're better than me, I can't.
Yeah.
And I'm a minute over 40. So,
Several thousand minutes.
But remember how hard that stuff is. So you can put it as a lesson, you can't put it as an expectation. Okay. If you expect them to hear comparison as a thief of joy, and then go, oh yeah, I should be grateful that I've got a bike and I should just celebrate the fact that the other child's got a better one.
Yeah.
If you're expecting them to just take that and suddenly change who they are, that might be asking a bit much of you and the child.
Got another one.
Give it to me.
Slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Wow.
Yeah. My old coach used to say that and it stuck with me. I'm like, it's so good.
Yeah, okay. Isn't it
Like
funny, the old
finesse.
coaches?
Yeah.
Boxing
coaches. No, jiu-jitsu coach. It's like slow is smooth and smooth is fast, Nico. And I was like, just made me stop and go focus on the technique.
Yeah, it's good. My boxing one is train hard, fight easy.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, I love that one.
There you go.
This coach used to say that.
Oh.
Train hard, fight easy.
Well, have you said that to Evie yet?
No. No.
I can't wait
She's
till I
on the
drop
weekend,
knowledge
so.
on him. And I go, God, you're wise, old man. I'm like, I am, aren't I, girls?
Yeah, don't hold your breath for that day.
Just keep saying it. Just keep saying it. All right, Bill, we've got 3 to go. Hey, Billy Nick, big fan here from the UK. I'm the dad of a brilliant 4-year-old boy, our first, with another on the way. I want to ask about how to cultivate courage in my son who has a fear of getting his head and face wet. It started shortly after he turned 1 with the mother of all Griswolds when I let him slip under the water while washing his hair. God, I know that. It's taken a long time for me to be able to even wash their hair without major distress, and he still hates getting his head wet even with the rain. He started swimming lessons about 6 months ago, and overall he enjoys going and tells me he wants to learn to swim so he can be a scuba diver. So we can go scuba diving when he's older. However, he won't get his face wet, jump into my arms from the poolside, put his face near the water, or do any splashing. He has an amazing imagination and plays almost exclusively through pretend play. So when the teacher gives us a task that involves something scary, he just retreats into imaginary play. As the rest of the group progresses, we're spending more and more time just doing our own thing. We only have another 6 months or so before the parent and child lessons finish, and then he'll be getting into the pool without me. I've tried lots of different ways to encourage him to get his face wet, but I can't seem to help him feel safe enough to take the plunge. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the steps to help him overcome this fear and help build his courage around the water. I cannot wait for your response to this question because I have a child with the exact same thing.
Yeah. So the scuba diving
So good.
is great. What's the problem with that goal?
There's a chasm between it. There's a gap. There's a gap.
So it's beautiful as a narrative and a way to put a positive spin on swimming and all that stuff.
on.
It's not helpful as a I'm succeeding.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what's a smaller stretch than we'll celebrate stuff when we get to the point where we're scuba diving together.
Love that. So good.
So what do you do? We've talked a lot about this.
Talk about
answer,
gun exposure, going to the pool,
fun.
go.
Yeah. What's the stretch bit? We talk about stretches a lot. Zone of proximal development.
Proximal development. So the stretch is, so you effectively you want their head underwater, right?
What's the goal before that?
It's somewhere
This
in
kid can't
between.
have water on his head in the rain.
I know. Yeah. God. What's the bit before that? You put water on your head, show them. I don't know.
Yeah. So where's the level of tolerance? Where's the level of tolerance at the moment? Like, so imagine
Low.
imagine
Low.
it's like get scared in the car park at the pool.
Right.
So you get comfortable there first.
Play in the car park.
Yeah, but the swimming lesson's too much.
Yep.
And don't set this expectation on yourself that the swimming lesson, he can't have the dad in the pool in this many months, so I have to have it all sorted by then, because then you're putting pressure on yourself.
Yeah,
It's like I have to have toilet training sorted by next week. There's a school camp coming up. You know, I have to have this thing sorted. I'm really worried. He's about to have a sleepover. I've got to get him sleeping independently. Pressure always makes things worse.
Yep.
So take that out of the mix straight away. Do all the stuff we've talked about in the previous question: exposure, opportunity, fun, enjoy it. But the stretch is really important, and the stretch is too far. I can't hear the stretch in this, and I can't hear the goal. So there's got to be a specific goal that within a week can be achieved. Within a number of visits to the pool is a better metric of like, cool, this is what we're going to do. And it might be we just don't get distressed in the car park. You know, it might be we just enjoy some element of being in this environment, and you will. I've often said this, one of the biggest reasons that we set kids up to fail is the developmental expectation is too far. And so drop it down. What is a realistic thing that we can do that this kid will feel they have success in elements of water? That's the key. Like, how do you do that? How do you bring that back in? You've done it, I've done it. Like, we've been really lucky with this, but we all get really scared that this is always going to be a bad thing. There's a path out for all these kids, whether it's severe trauma that they've experienced from adversity in their childhood, or it's they've fallen and put their head underwater and now they're really terrified about it. Time heals things, but not on its own. Give them opportunities to enjoy that environment, be successful, and an achievable stretch. Try and just keep the scuba diving story, but do something that you think in a couple of weeks we'll be able to celebrate this. And it might be being in this car park and it being a fun experience. We're working on how brave we can be just being here. We're working on how brave we can be walking through the doors. We're working on how brave we can be sitting on the side of the pool and watching other people enjoy it. Isn't that great? And you will. You calm it, you bring fun in, you bring opportunity, and it will happen. It will happen accidentally. The courage will come, the pressure will be off, they'll be having fun, and then bang, you're immediately on it, celebrating it. But you can't set the goal, their head being underwater or scuba diving. Beautiful narratives, not achievable targets. Kids need to learn and be successful very quickly at this stuff. So you just got to make the goal smaller, not push them harder. Does that make sense?
It does. Just listening intently.
I've got to go.
2 to go, Billy. Hi, Nick and Billy. long-time fan of the show here. First-time question asker. Absolutely loved episode 84 and its particular relevance to our nearly 4-year-old daughter. She is an orchid with big dreams, but sometimes lacks the courage to fulfill those dreams. We have had great success with her recently by staying by her side and supporting her until she is ready. For example, recently we took an aimless Bunnings trip on a raining Sunday along with what seemed to be like every other family in the suburb. She saw the indoor playground and had her heart set on climbing up to the very top to play in the helicopter bubble. There were lots of much bigger kids having a great time running and screaming. She was so overwhelmed by the noise and all the other kids heading in different directions. We sat together and watched the playground for 25 minutes, all the time talking about how the other kids were being noisy because they were having fun and that we could wait until she was ready to play or go home and if she didn't feel ready today. Eventually, she worked up the courage to climb to the very top with the support of her younger sister, and it was heartwarming to see just how proud of herself she was and that she's been able to accomplish this. It felt really good as a parent to be able to support her to build the courage in her own time. My question though relates to when we don't have the spare half an hour to wait for her to feel ready to do something. She has been going to the same daycare since she was 6 months old and really settled there. Loves her teachers and has a great network of friends. After her sister was born, however, I developed severe postpartum depression and was hospitalised in a mother-baby unit and on and off for a period of 5 months. Since then, she's really struggled with separation at daycare. We do lots of social stories, talk about the fun things we might do that day, who she will see, etc. She frequently tells us she wants to go off and play with her friends, and straight away when she arrives, however, when we actually get there, she just can't bring herself to have the confidence to do the drop-off how she wants to. This often results in a double whammy of separation anxiety with disappointment in herself, and she can't run off and play happily. We don't put any pressure on her that she has to do it a certain way, but she has this internal drive to be this astoundingly confident kid. As you probably understand, by the time we get to daycare drop-off, we don't have the luxury of hanging around until she is ready to go like we did at Bunnings Playground. How do we ease this transition for her and work on her building confidence? Thanks so much for the time and effort you both put into the podcast. It has helped our family so much, and I recommend this pod to anyone that sits still long enough to listen to me raving about it.
Amazing. What do you think about that?
Amazing. Yeah. God, I've had
it's tough though, isn't it? Because you kind of like, I know what I need to do. I can't do it because I can't sit here for half an hour. I can't stay at daycare.
It's always plan B.
Yeah, this is what I'm in the thick of this right now. Yeah. Couple of things. You are an amazing parent. The reason that the kid has separation anxiety is because you have healthy attachment with them. The reason that they're coming back to you is because there was a challenge through the postnatal depression. We know that challenges attachment, but you are being such a phenomenal parent, and that is why the child is leaning into it. We worry about separation and attachment when the child stops trying to connect, stops trying to see the caregiver as a sanctuary for that anxiety they're feeling. It is proven in the fact that the child is leaning in and seeking attachment, and you are beautifully meeting them and increasing your level of engagement and support. The Bunnings story is beautiful. We don't need to do that every time. We just need to squeeze everything we can out of those times. So remember that story, take photos of that story, keep bringing up that story. Echo that through that child's story. Kids become who they are. Tell her how confident she is by that beautiful example that you've given. Remember that time. I've got photos of it. I've got video of it on my phone. Remember that time where you did this. You don't use it as a pressure point when they're struggling with something. Hey, remember this? Just bring it up and talk about that. I do that with a vet all the time. Make sure they're reminded constantly of the times that they are courageous, and give them at times. You don't have to do this all the time, but make sure there's always times that you give them as much support as you can for them to succeed. It doesn't need to be every time, but it needs to happen. And then elevate it, you know, get as much out of it as you can. And then the other times you do what you need to do. That's the plan B. We get better at stuff when plan A. Bunnings is plan A. The drop-off where I can't wait is plan B. Plan A, the more times you do plan A, the better they will get at that thing that plan A is focusing on. Tell the story, elevate it, build them up, use it. It's amazing. It's a beautiful example. But it's an unrealistic expectation that any of us will be able to do that all the time. None of us can. You don't need to, though.
Don't need to. Yeah, tough one.
Phenomenal. That parent is amazing. I'm learning stuff from that parent, like a lot of these stuff that come in.
Hey, Billy, last question. Second last question.
Last one, I think.
Last one.
There's
Yeah,
just
sorry.
a bit of other stuff coming after it that'll be valuable.
Yep. Sorry, I've just mildly lost my place. Here you go. Hey, Billy. You guys are doing a wonderful thing. I need your help. I have a question connected to the Cultivating Courage episode. It's a two-parter about my 6-year-old. Part A. Last night, she said, I hate myself. Sorry, he said, I hate myself. He's often said, I'm no good at it and can't cope with losing or winning too much. What do I say to that? Don't hate yourself? Surely there's something better I can do.
Do you want to answer that? And then we'll
You
go
go
to part
for
B.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think about if Winnie says, I hate myself? Or easier one, I'm no good at that.
Wouldn't just say they're good at it.
Why not?
Because that it doesn't validate. You got to validate the feeling and try and figure out what emotion is going on underneath.
How do you figure that out?
Ask some questions, open questions.
Yep. How else? Do you ask them to explain it? Do you say, why do you hate yourself?
No, I wouldn't do that.
No. Just get them talking about it.
Yeah.
Say that must feel awful.
Yeah.
And then find why. There's always a reason.
Validated by saying it must feel awful.
Yeah. And then your job, if a kid says that, your number one job is to find out why. Talk to teachers, watch them socially, what's happened. Is there something they feel like they're failing at? Is there something they don't feel like they're as good as everyone else at? Why has this fragility come through in their self-esteem? All that stuff. It's really important. Always find the reason. Whether it's I hate myself, I want to kill myself, I don't want to live anymore, find the reason. These are kids signaling to us that they're struggling. It shows that we have a beautiful, open, safe relationship with them where they can voice that to us. We don't want to shut it down by dismissing it or overreacting or blowing up or getting angry or anything like that. We want to keep them talking, make them feel safe, make them feel secure. Open questions, like you said, but don't expect that they're going to explain it to you. Find the reason. In a 6-year-old, there will be a reason. Something is going on in their world that's making them feel like that. Find that reason.
That can be hard to pinpoint.
Something will have happened at school, something's happened with social relationships, something's happened in the house. And it can be stuff that you're like, I can't believe this has caused that. We've moved home, you know, we've gone to a bigger house, a better place, we've had a new baby, it's beautiful. I've left this abusive relationship, all that stuff. But find the reason. A lot of kids, when relationships fall apart, will blame themselves. A lot of kids who transition in school, perhaps akin to primary school to high school, all that stuff. These are big jumps, and if kids don't make that jump, then they start feeling they're less than. And so find the reason and give them opportunities to build that up and watch them. And your target is, what do you like about yourself? You want specific answers to that question. Like I've talked about in clinic a number of times, every kid gets asked, what do you enjoy? What are you good at? They've got to have answers to that, especially the second one. So that's how you find the specific things that this kid likes about himself. It's beautiful. And Alice's sister is a phenomenal public health nurse in a remote Indigenous community and is doing this amazing stuff for women about celebrating their bodies. And they get clay and they mould it and say, like, what do you love about your body? And they then have to mould that part. I reckon it's a beautiful thing to be doing. Don't you?
Yeah.
Could you do that?
About myself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to say what it is, but can you imagine yourself sitting there with a clay and moulding something you like about yourself?
Yeah.
We should do that though, shouldn't we?
Yeah, it'd be my pins.
Your pins.
My mum's always told me I got great legs. Not even joking. She's got great legs.
That's amazing.
I was like,
yeah. Wow. But it's true though, isn't it? And it's funny you say that because that's the other answer to this question, isn't it? Make sure that kid is constantly hearing in a genuine way all the things that are good about them. Because it is. My mum always told me how good looking I was.
Can't wait for people to be like, you've made the longest episode and you still reckon you got time to talk about your pins, Nick. Sorry. All right,
give
Billy,
me part B.
At a wedding on Saturday, he was so shy, he was incapacitated. For most of the night, he didn't speak, didn't nod or shake his head in response to basic questions, and he would stare at the distance when people engaged with him. These shyness states happen irregularly and are hard to predict. In preparation for the wedding, we shopped for new clothes that he enthusiastically chose. He wanted to sit at the kids' table, not with me. He's a music-loving, dancing kid and remembered a previous wedding that he danced and loved it, especially the Macarena. We talked about it, what to expect at the ceremony and reception on the day. Now, on the day, he wouldn't let anyone take his picture, changed his clothes so he didn't look too fancy. He sat at the kids' table without engaging with any other kids. He looked trapped, so I asked if he wanted to sit with me. He half nodded, so I picked him up and he sat on my knee for the entire night. He wouldn't dance, so I held him as I danced, and then he went limp and heavy. He wouldn't be with anyone but me. He didn't speak to or look at anyone, and then when they were trying to engage him, I know he was absorbing everything, but he wasn't able to respond. As best I can, I am led by the needs and scaffold concepts and skill development, stay positive, offer alternatives for unwanted behaviours, and be an engaged parent. I might not be at Nick levels of application, please, but I work hard to be the best I can be for him. His shyness creeps up and it's sometimes so overwhelming he seems to fold in on himself. I'll put him on the shoulders and walk him into a safe space. He flops on my head and grips my hair so hard he rips it out. I can see he really wants to be part of whatever is going on. He can't get there. Sometimes in these catatonic shy moments, I have wells of uncriable tears behind my eyes. And yet sometimes he isn't like that at all. He engages with new kids or adults in warm and genuine ways. He has friends and is doing so well at school. It's hard to understand what makes a successful encounter. The question, what can we do to help him be courageous, get past this and be able to enjoy the moment? Is this a sign of something deeper? And how do we counteract it at this age? Thanks for the time of reading this. Thanks for taking the time to read this ramble. On another note, I've started to give props to other dads for their dadding because, as you mentioned, we rarely hear it.
Yeah, amazing. So this kid is in flight mode, and we think the kids are only in flight mode when they physically run, but he's leaving the environment mentally. That's why he's shutting down, won't look at anyone else, won't take anything else in. He's too overwhelmed that he's completely shutting down. Now, if it's only at the wedding that this is happening, then I'm not worried about it. If he's thriving at school, he's thriving at home, his social development is thriving, he's having increased friendships, increased depth of friendships, his self-esteem is flourishing, all that stuff, it's great. The way you figure out if this is a sign of something bigger is think about his functioning outside of the wedding. But the wedding is it's such an overwhelming thing. It's like we talk about, it's the birthday party, it's the playground, it's the final place that often we'll get good at these things. There's also probably unintentionally just a lot of pressure was put on this moment. That's why even before it, he was like, I don't want to dress up as fancy. He's trying to pull attention off him, and then it gets too much for him despite all those strategies, and he just shuts down. And so he's left the environment. He's physically there, but he's not taking any of it in, and he's just holding in his sanctuary and the safe attachment figure he has in his dad.
How's he been able to do it before?
Well, it probably goes to part A. Something's happened that has meant that he's got fragility that's occurred, and that's why we're seeing. And sometimes the first sign of that fragility might be, I don't like myself, or I hate myself. And sometimes it might be that those really big stretch expectations, the playground, the birthday party, the wedding, is where they could do well before, but they can't anymore.
Okay, just trying to think how might that fragility have bubbled up.
Yeah, it'll be something. A 6-year-old, it's very hard to explain where it's come from.
Probably someone said something or they've seen something that they can't do, something like that.
Yeah, but they're just taking that. Even there's a clue in the brackets where he's like, he can't lose, but also winning he struggles with.
Yeah.
So he's just, there's a lot of kids like that there's just too much heat on them. And a lot of it is just taking the heat off them.
Yeah, that was interesting, that bit, wasn't it?
Yeah, lower level intensity support and all that stuff. But yeah, weddings can be really tough. Like, it's just an example of like, that's the highest level of demand we're asking, and it's just a sign. But just build them back. All the stuff you're doing is phenomenal. Keep reinforcing that attachment. Take some pressure out of the system. That's the last of the questions. Now I'll go through them quickly. We just got some feedback and then some beautiful advice at the end of it. It's going to be our longest one, but I'm hoping that people will appreciate this. All right, so we're going to take it in turns. We've just got a few rapid fire feedbacks.
Go for it.
Okay, so hi Billy and Nick. I'm a very new listener. Saw one of your clips on Instagram and thought I need this kind of guidance in my life. The episode on Jumanji and cultivating courage could not have been more timely for me. This past Saturday, my 3.5-year-old engaged in the cherished American tradition of T-ball. Not sure if there's an Aussie equivalent. Do you have T-cricket? Joining the T-ball league was his idea. His slightly older cousin, as well as his neighbours, are participating in the same league, and he wanted to join in. Team selection is done at random. However, he was not on the same team as one of those familiar figures. Add to that the unknown of the activity itself, and he was completely lacking courage when the first day came around. His response to this kind of fear typically is anger if he's at home with me and my wife, or completely shutting down if we're out in public, just like the other kid. My wife and I, thinking on our feet, suggested that we have a yes day in which we would say yes to every activity proposed that day, including T-ball. No surprise, but the bribe of a yes day didn't magically give him courage. We dragged him kicking and screaming and headed to the sports complex. I carried him to the corner his team was sat at, and he promptly shut down. He wouldn't talk to me, the coaches, or the other kids. He refused to participate in the first half, which involved practicing drills. The second half is a mock game. No one keeps score, and it's just intended to get the kids running the bases. First at bat, he put on his helmet, grabbed his bat, and then didn't have the courage to step up to the plate. Next, helmet's off, gloves on, and we're in the field. I stood up in the field with him, but he refused to chase after the ball, even when it came right to him. Repeat that cycle for the second inning, and now he's crying. I'm sorry to say I handled it very poorly. I began emphasising that we were on track to have a no day instead, in which we would say no to any fun activity. Even in the moment, I knew I was doing a poor job parenting. There wasn't a good path forward, but I was frustrated, probably a little embarrassed and out of ideas. I should have been thinking about his needs more carefully. His team was getting the last at-bats, and I told him this was his last chance to have a yes day. Will you say yes to getting your at-bat and hitting the ball? Through tears, he said yes and I asked the coach if he could go first at bat, knowing this moment would be fleeting. My little guy stepped up to the plate and I snuck away as he began interacting with his coach for the first time in the hour since he'd been there. I pulled out my phone and captured this one moment of courage as he hit the ball and ran to first. He touched each base and went into his home into teammates and took all our at-bats. After that, the game was over and his coach, picking up on my cue, invited him to lead the line, high-fiving the opposite team. He participated and had a huge smile on his face, and afterwards I felt awful. I knew I'd chosen threats rather than support. I think he's going to be more willing to participate in this specific activity in the future, but I need better tools for the next thing that requires courage. I was definitely asking too much of him. We've practiced hitting balls in the yard and he's proficient for his age, but there was so much more to that morning that I could have helped him get comfortable with. Between now and the practice session, I'm going to have to get him used to wearing his ill-fitting uniform. We'll practice catching and throwing the ball. I'll try to take him to the field so he can get comfortable with the surroundings when it isn't packed to the brim with kids. I'll talk about how scary that first day was and how much courage it took him to hit the ball. I hope I can learn to support him better. There are so many things in life that he gets too scared to try, and he often responds with hitting and yelling. He's not even 4, but my wife and I are worried that if we can't help him cope with these things in a healthy way, then hitting and yelling will be the only response he carries into adulthood. Thanks for everything. Just amazing. We'll just keep punching through these because they're
cool. Hey, legends. I think it might have been me who sent the Jumanji scene recommendation, but we are a neurospicy household, and true to form, I've lost the email to you too. Really, I just saw the scene and thought, oh, this would be great for Nick and Billy. I reckon this could get some good messages out from it. But now you've presented it, I get why the scene resonated with me. Our kids haven't been easily our kids haven't been easily confident kids. A 9-year-old has been the kid who has been completely and overly overtly overwhelmed with separating and participating in anything. A 10-year-old will have a go, but more quietly expresses his overwhelm by taking himself to withdrawing, observing from the sidelines, sucking his thumb. We're fortunate that we've been able to access support since the 9-year-old was 3. He, Dad, and myself have since been diagnosed with ADHD and have invested a lot in trying to help everyone be the best they can be. We don't always get it right. Our folks responded to us the best way they knew and have shaped our default reactions. When the kids are struggling, it's easy to fall into the authoritative, frustrated response we received. Come on, mate, get on with it. Jeez, I still say that shit. It's hard as parents. Sorry, that was me saying that. It's hard as parents to respond in the moment in ways we are just learning. But with the assistance of supports, including listening repeatedly to your pod, we're seeing how trying different strategies, we're recognising and regulating our responses really impacts the kids and outcomes of those moments. We actually see some days, well, let's go hours, work out in ways where everything is growing and the kids are thriving in their own ways. I can't express my gratitude for your help to experience these moments.
Amazing. I'm a relatively new listener and want to thank you and your families for all the time, energy and passion you put into this podcast. Don't underestimate the impact that you're having on the lives of children's parents and hopefully community more broadly. I have a 4-year-old boy and listening to your podcast episodes, often 10 to 15 minutes at a time, has helped me reflect on a range of things. I feel like I'm reparenting myself while I'm also trying to be the best parent I can be to my little boy. That's not a negative reflection on my parents. We just know so much more now about the emotional and social developmental needs of children that my parents and parents before them didn't. In particular, the strong themes around helping our children develop their identity and the 10 things I hate about you, school success and Groundhog Day positive psychology, especially the meaning in PERMA, really resonated for me. In particular, how a lot of the challenges I face as an adult relate to not having developed that strong sense of identity and solid self-worth alongside that. And when you couple that with Jumanji, Cultivating Courage episode, I find there are really strong links between these things. I find I'm not courageous in aspects of my life, particularly relationships, and ensuring my needs are met in relationships due to the lack of a strong sense of identity and self-worth. So I don't have a particular question as such, but these episodes have really helped me think about the work I need to do to continue for myself, while also guiding my son during these formative years and developing a strong sense of identity and self-worth to hopefully support him later on in life to cultivate courage to stand up by his values and integrity. One thing particularly I want to pick out in the Cultivating Courage episode is, Billy, you said about being challenging raising girls and cultivating courage, and that perhaps it's easier to cultivate courage in boys. In the context of recent gendered violence incidents around Australia, I would suggest that there are equal challenges to raising boys and cultivating courage, and as a society we need to cultivate more courage to address inequality in a range of contexts, ingrained gender norms, racism, just to name a couple. I understand that cultivating courage can apply to so many different contexts, and in a 4-year-old boy, I'm not expecting him to be able to understand these types of issues, but I do think that it's something that we have to think about, have to think about very regularly in relation to raising my son. I want him to be able to be the boy who stands up for himself and others appropriately when he sees people treating others inappropriately. Well, there's some good initiatives in schooling systems, e.g. respectful and resilient relationship curriculums, the use of restorative practices for conflict resolution. There is more work to be done to support families in the community more broadly to ensure that children are being exposed to more positive role modelling of relationships and equity in relationships. So again, no particular question, just thoughts I'm pondering about your most recent episodes. I'll go back to listening to some of your early ones now that I'm caught up in the current episodes. Thanks again for your passion and commitment to making our world a better place for this and future generations. Yeah, I didn't expect that one to hit me, but just very quickly, I 100% agree with you. I've been talking to a lot of people about this. We need to do better in how we bring up boys, and I'm thinking about we do an episode on it, but yeah, we've got to do better and we've got to do it quickly. I'm terrified about Evie because of this. I'm sure a lot of us are. It's scary. This is men's responsibility. You still just see it's really just women that are standing up about this, and it's not good enough. And I think we need to have better role models and we need to have people. I'm very fortunate that I've someone who has the expertise to understand why this is happening, and also hopefully, especially with your help, a way that we can guide to practical solutions to overcome it. But I 100% agree. I just had to read that out. I didn't think I'd get so emotional. Sorry. You go, mate.
No worries. Hey, Billy, Nick, fabulous episode this fortnight. I really feel for you and your family, Billy. We're shift workers here too. It can be an epic roster and long days. You are not alone in this struggle. I'm going to be a dork and start with a quote. Being deeply loved by someone gives you strength, while loving someone deeply gives you courage. Lao Tzu said that. This week, my daughter and I went to the local creek. We were mucking about and I came up with the idea to build a small boat out of sticks and reeds. I found some sticks and began showing her how to weave the branches together and asked her to have a go weaving it together. She looked at me and said, "No, Mummy, I can't do that. I can only do it when I'm older." It was like ice water down my back. My heart sank. I'm trying to protect her from skills and things that are beyond her age. We have accidentally imprinted all the things beyond her because she is too young. Sorry, let me read that again. In trying to protect her from skills and things that are beyond her age, we have accidentally imprinted all things are beyond her because she is too young. We love her so much that we need to practice deep courage to let her do more things just outside of her zone. It's not her fear, it's our fear. She has all the strength in the world because we inject all our love into her. So, I had to act on this. For the rest of the day, I found every opportunity to let her do it because she can. This involved doing her own face paint and nail polish, including the glitter, swinging off the tree rope just that bit higher, collecting the chook eggs by herself, and walk across the creek rocks without me holding her hand. She nailed all of them. We love her so much. She must be courageous to let her. We must let her be courageous to let her grow. Gives me palpitations every time, worth every missed heartbeat. P.S. She had a big stack off the rope swing at the end of the day, but still got up to go again. Win. Thanks again, guys. Absolute legends.
It's phenomenal. So probably the same day that person was doing that, I was in the parklands that is near us in a creek that is mainly just stormwater runoff. And Evie we were in there with the dog park crew, with the dogs. Annalise was there, and Evie wanted to cross the creek. It was pretty deep. There was a fair bit of water moving because it's rain, but I did it. I did it very quickly because I could see Annalise was watching and wouldn't have let me. If I'd asked her, she would have said no. So we spent probably half an hour just going along the other side of the creek, which is a steep embankment. I don't know how much you know that area of it. And it was hard. I fell in twice to pretty cold water. Evie fell in once. There were tears. She got caught up in a rose bush. There were tears and upset. We got to the other end, and the only way we could get across was like by a big stick as wide as my forearm, which is pretty wide, using it as a bridge. And bloody Melfi kept, every time I'd set it up before we'd step on it, she'd pull it into the water thinking it was a stick for her. So it was a lot that happened, but it was this beautiful thing that we just did together. And I was, because of the first Courage episode, I just saw it as an opportunity and went with it. And I took photos during it, and we walk past that creek all the time now. And I can talk about how brave she was and how courageous we were in doing that. Even though we fell, we picked each other up and all this stuff, and then we were celebrated on the other side of it. And it was just so amazing that at the same time I was doing that, someone who listens to the podcast was doing a really similar thing. And we should do that. That is how you cultivate courage, opportunities like that. It's just amazing. The last thing I want to read, and then we're done on the longest episode we've ever done, is a really helpful thing from a therapist, and then we'll close it out. Dear Billy and Nick, firstly, I just want to share how appreciative I am of this podcast. I consider myself super lucky to be both the mother of an amazing 2-year-old and a psychologist who gets to work alongside some incredibly young people and their families. The dialogue you inspire has a profound impact on both my personal and professional life, so thank you truly. I must admit, I'm often awestruck by how knowledgeable and articulate you both are. Nick, you're sometimes way too hard on yourself, along with the broader PCP community, so it feels a little bit intimidating to send in my own contributions to an audience I have so much respect for. I guess this is a great opportunity to cultivate my own courage in drafting this email. Hopefully this courage will remain, and I'll hit send. When you made the call out in your recent Cultivating Courage episode for any professionals working in this space, I instantly thought as a courageous, and if I can steal your descriptability, gorgeous 16-year-old I've had the privilege of getting to know these past few months. Some details have of course been changed to keep things anonymous. This young person, diagnosed with anxiety a couple of years ago, recently experienced panic attacks triggered by the thought of not making their rep basketball team. This resulted in them being unable to physically leave the house and attend tryouts, and they then remained in their bedrooms for a few days due to subsequent shame and disappointment. I will say this young person has loads of protective factors, including a supportive home, was engaged in school, and the fact they rocked up to see a psychologist indicated they were at least approaching the preparation determination stage of change. The first thing we did was strip it all back and explore the relationship this young person had with basketball. This was about reflecting on what it was that first drew them to the game, how they felt when they play, significant people, i.e. teammates, coaches, significant memories, what meaning and purpose basketball provides, their unique values as a teammate, etc. What this did was provide a lovely framework that their connection with basketball had nothing really to do with being a member of a rep team or not, which I could circle back to in future discussions. The second thing we did was explore what was going on for the young person at tryouts, and a lot of this came back to the fear of the what ifs. What if I stuff up, make a mistake, miss the shot, and ultimately don't make the team? We're able to reflect that this discomfort of this potentially happening was so strong that avoiding the situation altogether was their way of protecting themselves. It was really important this was met with validation and empathy, because yes, this discomfort is really hard, and it's understandable their response was to avoid it. We then explored how the young person felt retrospectively. What is really critical about this exploration is being clear with its intentions. This is not about provoking shame or blame, but rather gently highlighting how any feelings of regret or disappointment show just how significant basketball is to them. This is also about gently allowing the young person to understand that avoiding one discomfort, fear of not making the team, has created another, regret. What a beautiful learning opportunity this is, and to also think about how we can reframe or use discomfort in a protective or positive way. Very fortuitously, there was another round of tryouts the fortnight following our session. Together, therefore, we set the goal of attending the tryout and giving it a go, importantly focusing on the progress of the tryouts and not the outcome. We discussed the courage this was going to take. We understood courage as having the realistic anticipation of discomfort, i.e. the what ifs were likely to pop up again, but leaning into as opposed to avoiding it, because we now know this avoidance is not helpful in the long term. Sitting in it and then redirecting this energy into what the young person can control. We then broke down as much as we could what this practically looked like. We discussed how attitude, respect, being a good teammate and effort were all in this young person's control. We discussed examples of what this looked like. We also broke down the scenario to pre, during, post tryouts and how the young person can best stay regulated and present, who was going to be their go-to for support and how they were going to access this support in a way that felt comfortable. So that by the end of the session we had a goal in mind, an appreciation of the courage required, a plan to follow. Importantly, while we set this specific goal, we also had the understanding that should it fall apart, that's okay, because this will allow us to gain more insights, which can then be applied to future opportunities, whether basketball related or not. The following session, we had a big debrief of how it all went, how the young person was feeling, what was helpful and unhelpful, the takeaways. The sense of pride this young person had in attending the tryouts was amazing to see and reflect on. We discussed how it was courage that gave the potential and opportunity for this experience to happen. I purposely did not ask whether they made the team because that was not our focus. Their beautiful parent emailed me later indicating they had made the reserves team and we'll get to train with the firsts and we'll have opportunities to break into that team as the season goes. Anyway, this turned out to be a long essay. Apologies about that. I understand if not useful or translatable to the podcast, but I want to share one way courage may be explored in therapy. I found both shifting the focus from the outcomes to process and the concept of leaning into discomfort to be useful in all different types of scenarios, along with placing supports in, of course. I particularly like the word lean because I think stretch is not about diving headfirst in without any support, but taking a more gentle, considered and sustainable approach. As you've reflected many times, we must meet the child where they're at, not where we expect them to be. Whilst I wanted to provide a professional's perspective with this example, I also believe there is a therapeutic opportunity in conversations such as these to occur outside of actual therapy. As you've mentioned several times, role modelling, the narrative we set and providing a space that offers unconditional empathy and support goes a long way. Thanks again for all you do. It's such important work. Amazing. I had to end on that. Phenomenal.
Huge.
That's the bits. That's a therapist. professional psychologist who's very good at their job and very good at explaining it, taking the time to share with us how they do it. And it's amazing.
Yeah, it's huge. It's amazing, like seeing the full body of work. Is how it sort of gets that outcome, like a positive.
Yeah, those are the steps. More succinctly than I can ever say it. Speaking of succinctly.
Yes, thank you, Billy. That is, longest ep on record. Episode, we were doing 2-parters recently, but we've had a big long one here, but hugely beneficial. Everyone loved hearing about how they could do it. I think everyone's keen to cultivate that courage with their kids where they can. What I think is really cool is like it's not like a simple one and done. It's like most other things. It's going to take some time to get it happening, but there's some pretty clear steps on how to do it. And I loved hearing the success stories, but could also relate to some of those parents who are in the thick of something that they're like, oh, is this going to lead anywhere? Or how do we actually do it? But it was awesome.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks very much, guys. We'll speak to you next week. Get us on the socials. Appreciate your time.
Hey, don't let your mother smell that beer on your breath. She'll take it out on me.
I don't want to see you again for the rest of my whole life. I don't want to see anybody else either.
Who is your daddy and what does he do?
Just use your best judgment. We trust you.